Good morning. It is Friday. It is the weekend for most of us out there in the world. It is Midnight's Edge in the morning. I am Tom Connors. With me is the boss man, Andre. How are you doing?
Greetings, everyone. I am good, even though I'm here in Norway still and not currently in Davos. I can only imagine that my invitation must have been lost in the mail.
So
Guess
sad.
you're missing out.
Yeah. I have the diesel car to drive there and everything. So, yeah.
Must be strange to have like 20 countries around you.
So, yeah, but anyway, here with you all, and that's much, much better.
And then also joining us this morning, at least for a brief time, if not for the whole show, Six. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to talking about
That 90s show?
The 90s
that
show.
90s show. Well, yeah, I just realized I'm not really excited about talking about it. But I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be on the panel anyway.
Yeah.
We'll
thank
take
you.
what we can get.
Yeah. And also joining us this morning, the Shaggy Mane of Culture Casino. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm also not in Davos. I don't know where my invitation went. They may not like that I'm sometimes critical of that, but yeah. Hi, everybody.
You're critical of everything, though.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I'm sure they're very good sports, deep at heart.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's certainly the impression that you get from
I
actual reporters that have gone there to try to interview some of them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they don't really like to talk very much in public, and apparently they're big time partiers though. They have temporary girlfriends.
I heard that.
Taxpayers' money.
Yeah, hard at work.
And also joining us this morning from the Great White North, we have the Canadian pair, the dynamic duo. We have Call Me Chato, or Paul Chato, and Script Doctor.
Yes. Good morning.
Yay.
That's where you guys go.
Now, I have not.
This is our
been to
Canadian
Davos.
team, eh?
I have not been to Davos, but I have been to Bern and Lucerne. And Switzerland was the only place on our European vacation where we went into a restaurant and the service was so dreadful and the food so horrible. And in Switzerland, you have that automatic 15% gratuity that is in many parts of Europe. I actually calculated it off, and the wait staff were furious. They were just screaming at me. Tough.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was worth it.
Yeah. It was
Well,
a
that
good
was because
support.
you ran through naked. That was why.
Well, you know.
So basically, ringing endorsements of the Swiss restaurant in
Well, that
in
one.
industry,
It was
right?
terrible. It was terrible. So I said, "Hey, no, you don't deserve this gratuity." And I
Gratuitous nudity.
and I tend to be fairly gratuitous because I was a waiter and busboy. So, you know, I'm sympathetic to the wait staff, but not when it's crap. Okay,
I
over
tend to be
you.
generous because I'm afraid they're going to spit in my food.
I heard that.
Well, that's
I-
beforehand. Afterhand,
Not
it's a game on.
Afterhand.
Now, I've heard that America is one of the few countries where the whole like tipping thing is a big deal.
That is
So,
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised the first time I went there. I think I can say that. Put it that way.
Yeah, the United States was the first place I encountered where people got paid because the boss from the tips. They pooled all the tips, and then that's
Yep.
where their salaries came from, which I thought.
Which I think is bullshit. To be
I
honest with you.
agree.
Yeah.
It was not particularly nice.
Because it's always generally one or two of the people busting their hump and the rest of them doing
Yeah.
nothing. And
Well, there's that too. Anyways, let Script Doctor introduce himself.
Yes, and introduce yourself, Script Doctor.
Hello, my name is the Script Doctor. And I have a problem. I like to read and write lots of scripts.
Hi, Script Doctor.
Hi, Script Doctor.
Would that be an addiction, really? Okay.
What?
Writing too much. I mean, I suppose if you start bleeding from writing too much, maybe.
Most people have a problem writing.
Yeah.
I got a problem. I can't stop writing.
No.
I can't stop.
They can't start writing. Tom.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm being
the
facetious.
blank page intimidates a lot of people. For me, even if I don't know what I'm going to write, I'll just start writing my thoughts, and then eventually something will fathom from that.
That is a technique.
Yeah.
How do you
But
think I
most of the
came up
time
with
I have a lot
Nunchuck
of
and
weird
Dinosaur?
ideas, and I just have to get them down.
Maybe
I
you can
did-
come up with
yeah.
better ideas, Tom.
Hey, do you think you can come up with something like Nunchuck and Dinosaur? I'd like to see it.
Mr. Canoe Head.
You know what
Excuse
somebody
me?
said to me? We have to do. We have to
Oh, that's
have an Avengers team up
Yes.
of Mexican Iron Man,
Yes.
Nunchuck and Dinosaur,
Yeah.
Bat Tom, and Canoe Man.
I know the villain, Alf.
Oh, good idea. And you can't use Iron Man. You're gonna have to like Ferris Man,
Well, we'll work on him. We got
Mexican
it.
Ferris Man.
I could come up
Well,
with
this is
Brave
the
Beavers of the
Mexican
Bayou.
knockoff version.
There
I
you
think
go.
we'll get away
There's
with it.
there's a team.
Well, I think
Rainbow.
there's 3 people who got the Ferris reference.
Wait.
So, well,
Wait.
because they're dummies and they don't understand what Ferris is. Where do you think Plumbers got their name, folks? From the periodic table. Ferris out there. Come on, chat. You know what Ferris?
From the
We
from
talk about
TV,
Spider-Man
right?
and shit here, Paul. Come on.
Yeah.
How about Mexican Titanium Man?
Yeah, that's not bad.
That works.
Yeah, that's
Technically, it would be Mexican Tin Man
or Silver Man.
Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man.
or Mexican Peso Man.
Mm.
Mexican
That's like the
Peso
Wish
Man would-
version.
Well, okay. Then, if we're going to go with the periodic table, I have a better one,
Oh,
which is also quite fitting with the Mexicans, the Mexican Iron Man's Yucatan origin, with the Mayas and everything like that. The Mexican Golden Man.
Okay,
You had
ooh.
that.
that's classy.
Yeah, you had like,
Like
the priest and everything covered in gold. So I think there
Yeah.
we have it. Mexican Iron Man just got the golden upgrade.
Although
I like
Michael,
Mexican aluminum foil man because that's very useful.
I was thinking something with a lot of alliteration, like Mexican Mercury Man.
Mm.
although that
That's
would
not
be
poisonous.
he'd self poison.
I don't know. Maybe.
He'd
I
get
mean,
Minamata disease.
It'd be Mexican Metal
Magnesium?
Man because that would just be.
You know what's funny is I think this is the first time we're talking about Mikey, and he's not in the chat. I don't see him in the chat anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Well,
think
he's
on the
going to
road
have
this
to
morning.
listen to it after the fact.
So-
I
But
don't think he's. I don't know what he's up to today, but yeah.
I'm pretty-
we are up to quite a few things today. We have a lot
Yes.
of things to talk
Yes,
about.
that's
We're going to be talking some Alec Baldwin. We're going to be talking some movie news because we have gender bent Snake Plissken. We have another Tron on the horizon. We have some brand new series to talk about, such as that 90s show. So we're going to start with that. But before then, we got some really, really good news here.
We got
I
some
have
breaking news.
verified it, but we
Yep.
got a super chat from the blacklisted and unemployed Alex
Wow.
Schwartzman, who says for
Netflix
14
got off
South
their
African
ass.
rounds. Breaking news: Cobra Kai season 6 is a go. And if this is
Yay.
accurate, then in other news, Netflix don't have complete shit for brains because this was the biggest no-brainer decision they could have done. I'm amazed it took them this long.
Well, and it looks like it will end with season 6 according to TV Line. So we'll see how that goes. But here's an actual announcement from Netflix here. So
yeah,
there you
let's
go.
get
We've been
demonetized
fighting
right
so
away.
long.
Yeah, jump to, it's just stuff in all the other seasons. So they're actually advertising it as the final season. So there we go. All right.
Yeah, well,
Oh, that's kind of a first for Netflix,
Yeah.
or a rarity at least. They don't usually advertise if it's the last season.
Well,
until
and
you find out.
Here we
afterwards.
go. Yeah, as they said here, and they've been saying for a while, our day one goal with Cobra Kai has always been to end it on our terms, leaving the valley in the time and place we've always imagined. While this may be bittersweet day for fandom, the Miyagi-verse has never been stronger. We hope to be telling more Karate Kid stories with you down the line because, as we all know, Cobra Kai never dies. So maybe there is something to that other. Because we have not heard jack shit about this other spinoff that they announced since. I wonder if that wasn't something just to mess with Netflix.
you mean because when you say they, I do believe that you're
Sony.
probably referring to the Karate Kid project that Sony announced, right?
Yes, I'm referring to Sony, and when I mean they, yes, because the creators behind Cobra Kai have said we've heard nothing about this movie until you guys heard about it.
Yeah, exactly. Which only goes to show that they weren't involved. Which only further goes to show that either that thing was a bargaining chip or a tactic like that, or it was someone really laying an egg or dropping basically screwing up, however you want to put it. But anyway, this is all I wanted to hear, because I have to say I was never a huge fan of the Karate Kid growing up. I was kind of in the camp of that of Doogie Howser from that other series, that Johnny is the real Karate Kid. And then comes Cobra Kai along. And I'm still a couple of seasons behind. That's only because I lack time to watch it all, but I'm not worried, because everything I've seen of Cobra Kai so far is amazing. I've heard they kind of needed one more season, and here is one more season. And if they're going to finish it on season 6 on their terms, I couldn't be more excited about it. But how about you all? Who here has seen the other seasons and is excited about what is to come? Tom, I know that the answer is already hell yes for you. Let's hear
I
what
piddled.
the other.
I have not seen a single episode.
You've missed out.
Well, it's still available to me.
Yeah, that's the beauty.
Yes. And what's funny about it is it kind of encapsulates so many different kinds of TV genres in one. But yeah, and I know Culture, I think you've seen at least some of it, haven't you?
Yeah. My thoughts around it are great, awesome, finally, yay. Again, as long as they continue in the direction that they're going and it doesn't get stale, which so far it hasn't, at least to so much as that I've seen. The fact that this was a show stolen out from underneath Apple is still amazing to me. And no, not Apple, excuse me.
YouTube?
From
Yeah.
YouTube Reds,
Yeah.
I believe you mean.
Yeah.
But it wasn't stolen necessarily. YouTube Red was a disaster.
Yeah, folded,
Google
yeah.
was folding it, or Alphabet
Right.
was folding it.
Right.
And they ended up at Netflix.
Yeah, regardless, yeah. So the
That's
fact
because
that
Cobra
it was-
Kai was their only hit, really. That's why.
Correct.
Yeah.
Out of 158 new shows that they funded,
yeah,
Red was
well,
a disaster. That's another
regardless,
discussion.
out of YouTube Red was born this one, blessing. And I think that like I said, I think any more good stuff that goes against the grain, I guess nowadays, is a good thing. And I think you would enjoy it, Paul. I'm not nearly all the way through it all, but I think you would. It is.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll like it or not, Paul. I mean, I think you'll respect what it's doing. I'm not so sure you'll be into the show itself. Because it has so many, it goes all over the place. It's more like, it's shot more like a drama, but it has a lot of sitcom-y elements to it, but it also takes everything pretty seriously, right? So, I mean, at the same time, it balances all of that really well within the show. I mean, Script can probably explain it a little bit better than me, but
Well, it's not so much sitcom-y. It's a melodramatic take on karate and children. I mean, it's got soap opera elements to it, which is fine. And it follows it establishes and follows its own formula for the first 3 seasons, and then season 4 and 5, it starts to be more like an actual show as opposed to following a beat by beat formula of these are where the characters are, this is where they get together, this is where they break apart type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there is humor in there. I mean, to add
there's
to
a
what
lot of humor in there, really good, clever humor in there.
Well, what I meant by the sitcom-y element is you have like that odd couple element between Daniel and Johnny that always pokes its way into the show. So, I mean, I guess, it's not straight.
A rivalry. That's just in general.
Well,
they're not together as a pair until season 5.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Make me wrong.
I've heard good things about it. Just committing to a whole bunch of shows is always scary.
Well, the beauty of it, Paul, is it's only 10 episodes per season and they're only a half-hour piece. So that is also where it's not like the typical drama. It's not an hour. It's only a half hour.
Right.
And they go by pretty quickly. It's basically like watching a little
sorry.
longer movie than a
they're half
TV
hours?
Yeah, half hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, these
it's
are not
kind of
like
structured
one
like each season's kind of like a movie almost. So it's like basically 2 sets of trilogies is what we're looking at. And that's where Script, I agree with him. There is a shift in the tone at season 4. Yes.
Well, they
Or
realize
how they tell the story
can't
or whatever.
keep repeating the same rivalry between Johnny and Danny over and over again. So
Well, it has that will they, won't they kind of element to it.
Yeah.
Like the Rachel and what's his face, Ross or whatever thing. But I get it too, because like it's the moment you get them together, that's when the show has to switch gears, and that's kind of where it's getting to. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to it, and it sounds like just about everybody else is. Curious to see if Chato does like it when you do see it, Paul. But if you don't, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, entertainment is really weird to watch for me, only because you kind of figure out what everybody is doing, and it's hard for me to get lost in entertainment these days. Even if it's good, it has to be something really special, like a Wes Anderson movie or something like that these days to get me lost in.
The thing is, people who haven't even been fans of the movies per se, like Andre was just saying,
I like the movie.
Yeah, if you like the first film, the thing that helps is if you've seen at least the first 3 films, because there's a lot. Once you get deeper into the seasons, there's a lot that they pull from those other films, and they make sure that all of it's well,
I've seen the first 2, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but they make sure. I mean, they do flashbacks here and there for when they're necessary. So it's like not like you have to have been, but it does help. Like if you're at least familiar enough, there's a lot of elements that you really get to pull out of the show, because you can tell that the creators are huge fans of this franchise.
Right.
They paid a lot of attention to it. So, because that's the beauty of it for me, because somebody who was growing up as a huge fan, it's like they're doing a lot of things that I know will happen, but they're doing them in ways that still surprise me. And that's what I like about it. Because it's like, I know that logically this is where things are going to have to go, or certain characters that are going to show up, or how they're going to factor in. But they keep surprising me every season, and I love it. So in that respect, the writing is great. Like I can't speak to it on other levels, like obviously Script's the pro there. But yeah, like he said, there's elements to it that got annoying to some people, like the whole will they, won't they be work together thing and stuff like that. But and some of the kids' romantic stuff, I'm sure drove some people nuts. But because there's sometimes where it's like, wait a minute, weren't they just fighting? But like, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the children romantic stuff is actually the weakest part of the show, but everything else that happens around them, motivations are clear. The grudges from the movies still echo in the series, and they have to get over that. And then you have some really great performances from some of the kids, like the kid that was introduced in season 4, the young Tyrone, I think he was his name. In the first episode, you see him, you fall in love with this kid. You're like, oh man, he's such a cool little kid because he gets bullied and whatnot. And then he ends up going in a very predictable direction, but in a way that you completely understand and recognize. And they do proper setups and payoffs. A lot of the times, some of their setups you can see coming, but those setups and the payoffs are setting up something else that you don't unnecessarily know exactly when it's going to hit. And when it does, you're pretty satisfied. And that's why I enjoyed about the season.
Yeah, and I'm a big Kung Fu movie fan. I mean, Kung Fu Hustle is one of my favorite movies.
Kung Fu Hustle is great. Shaolin Soccer also fantastic.
Shaolin Soccer, yes. Enter the Dragon. Shaolin Soccer is absolutely unbelievably clever.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful movie.
I might be getting them mixed up, but okay, which one had the karaoke scene where a guy, as he's singing, he gets beer bottles thrown at his head? That's, I think, Shaolin Soccer, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah,
that was a really well done gag.
And all the Jackie Chan movies. I mean, so I'm a prime sucker for Cobra Kai. It's just a function of diving in and immersing myself, and these animes that I watch, there's a lot of episodes.
Speaking of diving in and immersing yourselves,
and
before
Netflix,
we immerse ourselves into Alec Baldwin here, there was another series that have now come out. Quite a few people have already immersed themselves in that 70s show from the 90s. Whereas now, times have progressed, the actors have aged, some of the characters have gotten grandkids, and boom, you've got that 90s show. And Paul and Six, I know that you have seen that. So probably you have a Script Doctor. Did you see it as well?
I saw it too.
Yesterday my girlfriend had us watching the whole thing.
Oh, wow, amazing. And Tom has seen it as well. Now, I'm going to stay out of this a little bit because I have to be honest, I never got into the original That 70s Show. have no cultural frame of reference.
Well,
for
first,
it.
I got to suggest that if you really, really, really want to get into this, we spent over an
don't.
hour talking about it last night. So we're not going to spend that long talking about it. I think we'll probably hit some of the highlights of that in this
Yeah,
conversation.
let's go with the highlight. Because
Yeah,
we have
cut us
many other
off.
topics.
So 6. I haven't heard your opinion.
Yes, let's start with 6.
I
Yeah.
didn't love it. I heard you guys talk about it last night. I didn't finish the Mead show last night, but I echo a lot of what Tom said. I'm a Midwest kid, not Wisconsin, although I did summer in Wisconsin at my grandmother's cottage.
Close enough.
But
Yeah.
it didn't ring true. I was a teen in the 90s and an adult in the 90s, and it didn't feel very 90s, especially the kids. They seemed pretty 2000 and up to me. I didn't think that Red, he's lost a lot of his spark, which obviously the actor is older, but I think the lines that they gave him as a character, they could have punched up a little bit.
They're better.
Kitty
in
was probably the
subsequent
highlight.
shows. They are better in subsequent shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just watched the pilot, so, but I didn't even feel like it would be worth my time. And probably the main reason is because it didn't feel like the 90s at all. I spent a lot of the 90s drunk, but I still had to function, and I had a job. So,
but at least you got what I was saying last night, because that was part of the problem last night. Is these guys didn't get me.
Saying. And I think that what they were trying to do, they were not necessarily trying to make a show. I think Tom is too close to the situation. 90s kid growing up in Wisconsin. I think what they were trying to do is portray a show of what the rest of the country or the rest of North America or the Western world would think of 90s Wisconsin. Not necessarily what it was, but what the perception is. So maybe that's why it didn't quite come across as.
I should have just had you come on last night.
Well, I was sleeping.
Now that I've seen the first 3, it has nothing to do with the 90s. It's only 90s insofar that the first crew have grown up. That's what. So my initial thought in my green light. Do I green light this show? After 3 shows, I have not regretted that analysis because, and I'll be interested in seeing what the ratings are, but it's consistent. It's kind of charming. It's inoffensive. I actually think that Netflix is trying to go for the same age audience as that which makes up the younger cast based on now seeing 3 shows. It's ridiculous. It's unrealistic. It kind of makes no sense, but it's kind of charming at the same time. So, I again, with my network executive hat on, this thing is holding on to the edge of the precipice just fine for me. I'm not getting scared about that decision. So that's my thoughts after 3 episodes.
Did you get to the episode where they go to the rave?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of painful.
Oh, was it? The mall sequence was a bit painful. Like, why would she go and try to kiss a stranger? But then
that
again,
reminds me, they did that stuff on the there was this the To-Do List was a movie that came out with Aubrey Plaza years ago, and that sequence in the mall was exactly what the To-Do List was.
Oh,
and I'm like, why are you using, again, they did a very PG version of it, but it's like, I've seen this idea, and also I never understood this mentality where why would a girl who wants to kiss a boy do it with a complete stranger?
No, I found that unbelievably frustrating. But then the sequence with, what's the guy's name, Jay, the Kelso boy?
Yeah.
On the car, I thought that was really well handled.
Yes. Oh no, that part was good.
That was really good. And that's what's with this show, is that there's moments of cringe, and then there's these moments where you go, wow, I really like the decision making. I knew the massage chair gag was going to happen. I could see it a mile away, but I still enjoyed it. And then you've got the crazy next door neighbor who is humping Fez and all that stuff. I really enjoyed,
the next door neighbor reminded me of a very exaggerated, and I mean very exaggerated version of Six. Because
our Six?
Yes.
What? Wow.
Like Six, you are way more disciplined and tolerable than the next door neighbor on that 70s show.
I'm more tolerable. Okay.
So I thought that she was a good comic addition. Fez was great. He just blew the roof off of that episode. So committed to the character. A little bit of not Zoolander. What was the other the movie? This Sandler movie where he was a hairdresser.
Oh, Don't Mess with Zohan.
Yeah, it was very Don't Mess with Zohan. Which, since I love that movie, I didn't mind seeing it replayed in this episode. After 3 episodes, again, I haven't seen more than 3. I don't really need to see more than 3. It's not my show, but I just needed to see enough shows so I didn't feel like an idiot giving it a green light. Maybe I'll watch the very last episode just to, bookend it. But, it's not for me, but I thought it was charming. The kids are cute. I would love to get the opinion of, kids who are in one sense, this is a better version of Velma.
Yes.
But
this is also a show that is, I think, more so for the fans of that 70s show when they were teenagers.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That may be why I'm not clicking with it so much, because as we see here, it's at least number 1 according to my thing here right now today. I liked.
It's working. Yes, it's missing someone playing with a Nintendo Game Boy.
There's certain. Well, here's my thing: is even if you take all that stuff aside, again, I'm still, and this is just because I haven't seen more episodes, and it could change. Like I said, I'm still at this point where I'm failing to see where these kids land in this show because
stop it! Don't.
Yeah.
Listen, what happens is whenever they trip, they cut to a scene with Red and Kitty. And it's like you've got a really crappy hockey team, but like one good line. We're down. We're putting the big line out. Okay, they scored a couple of goals. Take a break, guys. That's what they're there. They're the they're the one big line that the hockey team has. And then just put them on the ice and they score.
Yep.
And you're okay.
I think one of the elements of that 70s show is that 70s show would scream 70s decade. As far as
that was part of what I was talking about.
And that's what I don't. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
I'm just saying this does not scream 90s. There's nothing.
Yeah,
about it
I think that's 90s. What I'm missing maybe from this show is that it's not as
their music choices don't properly scream 90s either.
No, they don't.
Like, oh yeah, that was a popular song in the 90s, but the context is not the same.
Well, yeah, I mean, they could do gags about Dr. Dre and go, well, those lyrics, those are quite salty, aren't they? Yes.
Well, and this is what I was saying last night about them having the Star Wars episode. Like next season, they should have an episode of them going to Independence Day if it's 96, because this year's season is supposed to be 95.
Forever reference in the show.
Okay, so there you go. I mean, that's fine, but what I'm also getting at is not so much that part of it. I'm talking about, like, we talked about the whole, like, Star Wars test as far as the characters last night. Like, I can sit here and name you off the kids from the original show, and you can tell me who they are, some traits about them, and stuff like that. And I'm having that problem thus far with these kids.
But you know what? Familiarity breeds contempt.
I get that, and that's what I'm saying. And I also am saying that I haven't seen the other 9 episodes. So saying that much at this point, they're just, the kids to me have not differentiated themselves enough and stuff like that.
After the 3 episodes, I am now Gwen so far is, although she's stunning actress, I don't know who she is. I don't know her character. I kind of understand everybody's character, but her script, would you agree?
She's a facilitating character. She's there to be whatever the show needs it to be in that episode.
Because what I'm saying is, okay, because my buddy,
the same thing happens to the Asian girl as well. She's there to be whatever she needs to be for that.
But I get a little bit more about the Asian girl. I mean, I'm getting who she is more than Gwen. Gwen, I don't get.
Yeah, you literally don't get much of her. Even when she has conflicts with her brother, you get more out of the brother than you do her.
Correct.
Well, and
Anyway,
like
she's cute.
a buddy of mine who I grew up with since we were little kids.
That is how you grow up, Tom. Just
yeah,
so
I know, but I mean, I've known him since forever. Is my point.
Oh, okay. I just thought that you needed
and he obviously is not any part of this kind of stuff, and he doesn't even pay attention to like what's this political stuff, right? Yeah. So he's telling me things like one of the first things he comes at me with is, "Why does every show have to have a gay guy in it now?" That's the first thing he says to me. And he's like, I don't mind the kid, but it's like, it's just weird. And he's like, and there's a whole episode about it.
Which
is
is
just
why
weird. These are the kind of reactions he's having to it.
Now, this is a 2023 group of kids. They are not a 1990s group of kids.
And he was kind of saying the same thing as I was. He's like, where's the chick who's like obsessed and crushed because Kurt Cobain's dead?
Yeah.
You know, like, where's this guy and where's that guy? He was saying the same shit we was thinking last night. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was saying.
It doesn't take a lot to place the show. It doesn't take a lot. No, I completely agree with you. But I find the kids cute and charming.
The good elements, like, I'm glad you like the kids. Me, so far, the kids are not warming up to me.
Them. No. I said they're charming. They're
usually that leads to liking something, but okay.
No. Again, it's not my audience. I'm not.
All right, fair enough. I, on the other hand, I can't stand them. Nothing about them has come across to me, and this is just going off of one episode. Leia's the only one who stands out, but she has character flaw problems that
she's
Script
the
and
star
I
of the show. In every episode so far, she's the star.
I think she's a terrible actress.
She's the Topher Grace character. That's clear, but she's
good. She's got range. She's good.
Yeah.
But they're mixing her, and this is what we were talking about last night, is they're mixing her too much with her two parents, and they're not giving her consistency. And I'll have to see how that plays out if I do pick the show up. But that's what I said last night. I didn't hate it enough not to watch any more of it. I don't know if I'm going to watch the entire run. I love the Kitty and Red stuff, and what I've seen of the older cast seems fine. Like, for the most part, they seem to be just like jumping right back into their roles, except for like you guys agreed that Donna seemed a bit off in the first episode. 96, you said something about her too, but
she looks like she's had a whole heck of a lot of plastic surgery.
So at least you could say that. We can't, but yeah,
like in the middle of Mississippi or something. It's not good.
Yeah,
nothing against Mississippi, but all the good plastic surgeons are in California. Come on,
that's the joke. Yes,
maybe. Yeah, that's pretty good, because the last time I saw her in something was in Orange Is the New Black, and I think that was before the surgery. Yeah. Because when I saw her in this, I'm like, what did they do to her eyes?
Yeah, she looked oriental.
Yeah, she's like Gwen Stefani. I am Japanese.
She's still beautiful. I'm sorry, she's sexy.
This is another thing. I didn't hear anything about OJ, no Monica Lewinsky or Bill Clinton jokes.
Well, that's 3 years later.
Is that okay? I was going to say, is that later?
The problem is none of the kids of today would understand those references. You have to be really careful. Even Kurt Cobain is meaningless to today's audience. Maybe a Nintendo Game Boy that has.
Well, Paul, you have to remember when that 70s show premiered, Star Wars hadn't had its big comeback yet, and all that stuff. It was on the cusp of. They talked about Burt Reynolds and other things that were big in the 70s. They had a couple disco episodes. There was a lot of things that was how kids of our era learned of that stuff.
Like I said, I am certain this show is not made for us.
Who's it made for?
The like I said, the same ages makes up the kids in the basement.
So you think
the show is made for?
So teens.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's stuff that they were doing. I'm going, okay. Are the teens? It's kind of like a Hillary Duff episode.
Well, then that's what's wrong with it, because that 70s show could have been. Wasn't, no, I'd say it is wrong, because that 70s show worked on both levels. If this show can't do that, then it's a failure in my part on a sequel.
The term wrong is irrelevant to a network executive that just wants to keep the slot filled with a show from season to season, so they don't have to fill that slot again with another show.
I will have to say, though, that executive and no offense to executives out there, but that executive is not taking a sufficiently holistic picture. That executive is thinking too much of thinking this lot without thinking, why is that 70s show such a hit in the first place? Why is that a show that is so remembered that it's worthwhile doing a sequel in the first place? And how can we make sure that the sequel has such longevity that in 20 years from now, we can make the 2000 shows or the 2010s?
Well, that's a really good question, but I'm here to give you insights into how the business works. And,
okay, because here's what
I'm going, Carsey Werner, they've put this together. I have to put a certain amount of trust in them just to keep my job also. I can't be bitching about this all the time. Or they're going to go to my boss and say, we know what we're doing. This guy that you've got hooked up with us is giving us trouble. Get rid of him. So there's all these things that are factored into a show like this.
Well, here's the other
element. This is
element.
why we can't have nice things.
Well, here's what I was saying, though, because like that 70s show worked for both the parents at that time and the kids. This show should do the same. And that's what I'm trying to say, because the original show was basically a takeoff on Happy Days. And like when I was younger, my dad would watch Happy Days and he would have nostalgia for it, and I would sit there and watch it, and I could get into it because of the Fonz and other characters. That 70s show was a little different for me in that time period. I didn't have necessarily, other than my other cousins and stuff like that, to really relate to when it came to that show. But there was elements of that show that I was starting to find myself getting into as a teenager.
Let me point out the fallacy of your argument. You are doing what I call the branding compression argument. So someone would come to us when we did graphic design, create a logo for us, and they could go, we want something that is as good as IBM's. And you go, what you're actually asking for is 40 years worth of brand expression that you can't. Time has an effect on your brand. So your feelings and ideas about that 70s show is a compression of all the shows that you watched, of the show that you watched. You can't just do that to the 90s show. You have to give it enough time so its brand expression will be solidified in the same way. So it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, Tom, you had some thoughts on this, and that'll be the final thoughts before we do the super chats on this, and then move on to the next topic.
Well, what I was trying to say, like, my whole kind of gist of what I'm getting at is the original show, as Texas pointed out here, is more or less what I'm saying. It was timeless. You can still watch it now, 20 years after the original show aired, right. And it's funny, even though it was making fun of shit from 20 years before that. This show, I'm not so sure is going to have that. There's something about this, from my reviewer aspect of this, from the audience aspect of this, from and I get what Six is saying, is something is off about this.
No, it's
when I am sold a brand of that 70s show that I'm not getting.
Timeless because it has become timeless.
Well, here's my other element I was going to say is we just talked about Cobra Kai. We just talked about, we had movies like Top Gun and other things that do exactly what I'm trying to say that this show is not doing.
But we won't know whether this show will be timeless until it becomes timeless.
Tom, maybe you and I should keep watching, and maybe we'll get to where
I guess I don't know.
Are.
Well, all I'm saying is, yes. I fundamentally agree with everything that you're saying, but I would like to see the reaction of its targeted audience, and obviously, Netflix's minutes watched numbers. I think they're going to be good. That's my prediction.
I think they're going to be good.
That the reason
the surprise is going to be that it's the audience that were teenagers when that 70s show came out is watching it, and not the young teenagers they were initially targeting.
But I think it could grow to that.
You could definitely grow to that. But I think it's the same thing that happened with that 70s show. It was targeted for the teenagers of that time, and some of them watched it, but the parents watched it because Red and Kitty is what sold that show.
Sure.
I think that the reason that that it's number one right now is because people like us watched it, and I don't necessarily know that we're going to be there.
Are you going to be there? Are you going to be there for the whole series? The whole, you're going to watch it all the way through, and that's the bigger point, right? I mean, this isn't something that's going to supplant, Wednesday, right? Overall, numbers wise, I don't know. Like I said, I have no experience with the show yet. Everything that I gathered from my exposure to it was that it was going to be something I would not enjoy, despite the fact that that would have been the 90s were like, early 90s were my college years. I just don't think I was gonna fall into it.
In a weird way, it's the prototypical blueprint that Disney Star Wars should have followed for their 3 sequels. Is just shove the shit filled with their old characters,
right, and
then let the new kids kind of bubble up to the surface. This was the blueprint. They could have used that 90s show as a blueprint to make the Star Wars sequels successful.
Well, and I mean, I think that was the original intent. I mean, and as far as George was concerned, the only 2 static things that would ever be in there would be the droids.
Well,
and they separated the droids.
So we needed droids in that 70s show, 90s show, and I guess we're done with this. Let's put a
we have a couple of super chats which are very specifically about this. For those that have sent super chats earlier and about other things, we're going to get to them. But right now, we'll finish up everything that 90s show.
And I haven't heard Script Doctor yell at me that I'm wrong, so I guess I'm on the right track there. Script, you're okay with what I've been doing?
No, I agree with you. I've seen the show from start to finish, and it's serviceable and it does what it needs to do, but it is very much avoiding. It's using the 90s as a superficial backdrop, which is fine. But Kitty and Red would be the R2D2 and C3PO. Kitty would be C3PO, Red's R2D2. They're the that's the relationship. And they're the ones that are actually holding the show together, just like they were for that 70s show. So they've got that part right. The only failing I see is that the kids aren't distinct enough to really have fun with the premise, but they're doing stuff for the summers, and that it's really just a show about a summer friendship as opposed to that 70s show, which was about a small town friendship.
I agree with you.
And then, in honor of 6 being on the panel to discuss this, Christian Delorme says for $2 Canadian, 6 is hot, call me miss. Matthew W says for $5, I grew up in North Jersey in the 90s. It felt more like how I remember the 90s from the burbs outside of NYC and Middle America.
Interesting.
You will all have to comment on that.
Because that was something that Paul brought up last night that I did think was interesting is, they don't make a big deal out of the fact that Leia's from Chicago. And I said, anybody from Wisconsin that was from a small town, like our biggest cities, like are so far off in most places, unless you live in one of them, you'd be infatuated with the fact that she comes from a bigger area. Like, so a lot of those kids would be interested in that part of her, but like they have that was what my issue with the show is. It's the kids. I don't have any other problems with the rest of the show. The rest of the show feels like I've stepped right back into that world, but as soon as they take us away from Kitty and Red and the rest of that and get into the new kids, there's nothing there for me.
And most of the kids in school these days in the United States have no idea where Chicago is, which is why I think they avoided it.
That could be a problem.
Also on that note, Mecca J says for $5, it should be called That Almost 90s Show, because so far not a whole lot of it screams 90s culture.
There was a lot to mine for cheap let's call it Frasier style gags, and they didn't. Why? I don't know. That was a decision they made.
Because that was one of the big, selling points of the original 70s show, kind of like I said, even more so than Happy Days, sold the fact that we're in the 50s and played with that. That 70s show literally did it on the nose with things. That's what I was trying to say with like the whole Star Wars and Burt Reynolds thing. Yeah.
And Granite Man speaks for everyone for $2 Canadian. 90s show, who cares? Move on.
We're doing that.
We're moving
To the Cobra Kai super chats, there were a couple of those as well. Mr. Tickle Trunk says for $2 Canadian, Cobra Kai so good it makes the movies better.
This is true in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
That's
It's
good.
called brand extension.
Yep.
And Bamagrad says
Canadian,
for
a lot of
$10.
Canadian bucks coming in.
Yeah, we have you guys bring in the Canadians, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bamagrad says for $10, hail to all. I will be going to Atlanta Comic Con where the big three, that's Daniel, Johnny, and John from Cobra Kai, will attend. Anything you want me to ask, or perhaps highly suggest they appear on Midnight's Edge?
Tell them that we're huge fans of them here, and we know Drunk 3PO, aka Jay. Johnny has met Jay like a few times now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you think
Because he was
remembers him?
like, I'm pretty sure, because he was, I think Jay was like Gina's assistant or whatever last summer or something like that.
Yep.
I don't know specifically.
You can
but
ask
like,
them,
yeah.
are they going to start the Cobra Kai multiverse next year?
Well, you never know what Sony may do with that announcement.
Everything has to have a multiverse now.
Yeah. And then Wolven Weaver says for $10, I know you. Yeah, we'll get back to that one. These are a bunch of anime recommendations. And we will get back to those for Wolven Weaver for $10 in due course. But right now we're going to just finish up what we were talking about here. So just Nova 1138 says for $4.99, what made 70s show were the kids and interactions with sarcastic comedy. 90s show kids don't have the same energy, and OG cast outshines still. And then Gonzalo Bergali said for $4.99, I think the short season worked well with the story. Just been 2 months, unlike the other series where the 10 to 8 episodes expand like the whole year. So yeah, with that,
You're a fan of that, Andre. I know that.
I am. I do like my seasons short.
And then I
Action
think,
Con.
as I say, this will actually get us into the rest of the Netflix discussion quick before we lose culture. If you want to go from there.
Yeah, let's do that. ActionCom wonders for $5. Chato, why did YouTube Red fold? Explanations have been confusing. What is stopping YouTube from getting into the TV show game?
The reason Red folded was because the YouTube brand is not a premier video streaming brand. No one wanted to pay for it. It's like Hyundai Genesises are hard to sell because Hyundai is not an aspirational brand. If you want an aspirational car, you get a Mercedes or a BMW. Okay, so its brand is hugely important in terms of perception. So nobody wanted to pay the extra money for YouTube Red because it was not perceived as a quality alternative to Netflix.
Yep. And
something you pretty much already get for free. Yep. Go ahead, Script. I'm sorry.
It's not only that, but when right before it launched and I was pitching to them, they told us that it was going to be behind a paywall. And I said, you're going to fail because you should make this network. You already have the ad-based model in your regular videos.
Exactly.
If you're doing it on, like if you're producing stuff of your own, you just have commercial breaks and you just do the network version. Since they're seeing ads anyways, you will be able to actually do a nice little division where you have your, what would be considered user-generated content and studio-generated content. And they said, well, we don't want to do that. We want to be the next Netflix. I said, not going to happen. And when I said that, I pretty much ruined every single meeting I had with them later on. But
well, no, but you're 100% right, Script, because at that moment, they didn't realize that, why? You're already YouTube. And that's what they're not realizing. They're not looking at in the mirror and seeing what they are, because they are the biggest streaming platform on the planet.
Right.
And they're not taking advantage of that. They're just, you
make a button that says independent created professional content, or RedTube, or whatever you want to call it. Although the Red was a problem too, because I think YouTube Red or Red YouTube or something is a porn channel.
Yeah, there was something else. I was like
RedTube, I think it was.
Just called it YouTube Studios and just made it like more
professional.
Yeah,
YouTube Studios, and it's another big button that people can click on. And if they don't want ads, then they pay their $10, $15 a month the way we can now. I pay YouTube monthly just to avoid the ads.
That was basically what they had before it too, Paul. It was
Yeah.
always,
Yeah. But just, included, they spent a lot of money. I did a show on this. I analyzed how many one-offs and how many series they did. It's like over 150 shows.
Yep.
Well,
that's a lot of money.
They were behind the 8 ball with Netflix from the very beginning, obviously, with what their model was. But at the same time, Netflix established themselves as a premium or a premium level tier in 2015. You launch YouTube Red in 2018, 3 years later, you're already way behind, and at that time, everybody was still relying on, the studio's content, even though there were some originals coming out. So, and how is YouTube going to compete with that? You don't have people going to YouTube for that kind of content.
It's because the executives at Alphabet are not very creative. They go, oh, that
data,
we'll do that. Can we do that? They're already doing that. Let's do that.
Well, it was a couple
differently.
There was a few folds in the problems with YouTube Premium or YouTube Red, whatever you want to call it. Because aside from Cobra Kai, which was their only hit, they decided to turn around and try and get some of their biggest YouTubers and make premium content with them.
Right.
That was another big mistake. Like, again, they went about it the whole wrong way.
Lisa Koshy did a sitcom that was quite charming.
Because, as I said before, YouTube was already established as you go to it, you watch it. It's an ad-supported system. They had it all set up that way. You can do it the way you said it, Paul, if you want to, as an extra added bonus. You can turn on the premium, whatever. But at that point, they were hobbling themselves because you had a hit show in Cobra Kai, and you put the first episode up as free, and then it was like what they promised drug dealers were going to be when I was a kid, and I'm like, that's bullshit. I'm still looking for the guy giving me free drugs on the side of the street.
You know what? I actually, and Lisa Koshy's first 2 or 3 shows, I believe, were promoted for free on YouTube.
No, they should have just been more heavy ad supported. Is all.
As an experiment, I don't think it was a bad experiment to try to see whether they could take Lisa Koshy, who had multiple tens of millions of followers on YouTube, and see if they could fashion a real show around her and see if it works. The problem is that they had no backup plan if it didn't work. They just
well, and that's where maybe I was going to get to is like what they should have done is sold those shows like a fucking network instead of turning around and trying to make us pay for it, because it was never going to work. It was never going to work because it's the whole thing of you keep giving people something for free. Then you turn around and say, well, now it costs something. They're going to go, fuck you. Well, that's the thing.
If your model has been giving something away for free for as long as you have that has been ad supported, turning somebody from a free person and converting them into a subscription person is damn near impossible.
Impossible.
Yeah. And I think that's the lesson to be learned here. And none of these people are learning it. In fact, they're regressing, and
if they would have done what I said, then Cobra Kai would still be on Netflix. They'd be making a bunch of fucking money, YouTube, and they'd be making a bunch of money off the ads for it, right? Because they could actually sell it like a network show.
Cobra Kai was one out of 153 shows, so they wouldn't have made money because the investment in all the other shows were failures.
Yes, but they wouldn't have had to get rid of Cobra Kai is what I'm saying.
Cobra Kai's success would not have made up for all their failures.
No, but they still would have had a successful idea of a model, and they wouldn't have spent the kind of money they did in trying to promote YouTube Red or YouTube Premium, what they ended up changing it. That's what I'm saying. If they would have just done it that way to begin with, then all these other shows would have just fell off. What few shows would have been hits, they could have continued, sold them as network shows. Like I said, sold them with ad time. Like specific ad time.
Of course. The problem was not the decision. The problem was they had too much money, so they invested it in too much shows, as opposed to trying to treat it as a bootstrapped startup. You have to change the mentality. There's something called crossing the chasm. Just because you're good at something and then you do something similar doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's actually a completely different business. And they didn't understand the completely different business. And they just blew way too much cash on way too many shows that didn't really do anything. And they should have started it slowly, tried to figure it out and see where the plan was going to go. It was a really stupid method that they used.
They started with 5 shows, one for every weekday that they would release. That would have been a more controlled and better data mining process for them to figure out if this would work or not.
Well, and think about it. I mean, we just saw another recent example of this bad idea, Genes, data driving these decisions in Quibi. Quibi was a colossal failure for the same reason. They dumped so much money into content creation, they couldn't survive the lack of interest. And that's, or the slow interest or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, it was, obviously paired with the global crisis, pandemic thingy. But at the same time,
speaking of that, boom, that's something that happened with the Netflix stocks earlier this year. Even if they are more or less the only ones in the game that are successful in streaming. In fact, I've always maintained that if everyone could just agree that Netflix is the streaming standard, just like DVD and Blu-ray was for physical media, then they'd be in a much, much better place than than what they were trying to compete for a limited streaming market. That's going to affect everyone, including Netflix. Now, to that end, I actually heard a rumor, and this is something I would love to hear Cultured Casinos take on in particular. And that rumor is that Netflix, although they have rebounded since they took a hit a few months ago, things still aren't great for them. We've seen that they have canceled a number of shows recently. And there's a rumor that reached me that says that they are now 6 months from going under. They're seeking bankruptcy protection behind closed doors. And this is something that may break in the trades before long here. And this is against the backdrop of Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings stepping down as chief executive. Culture, you have the pulse on all of these things. What say you? What's your commentary on
to address the rumor outright? I'm very doubtful. I'm hesitant to support it in any way. The company is the only profitable streamer out there. They have increasing support in the market. Right now, obviously, Reed Hastings is stepping down. He's the guy that recognized they needed to go from a physical media business to a digital media business, and sell the ability to stream these things would cost them less money to do and distribute that way, et cetera, et cetera. So that model has slowly evolved over time. This guy and his co-CEO at the time, or recently, obviously, was Ted Sarandos. They were incredible partners. They each kind of took different roles and different approaches. And for like several years, they let it get too loosey-goosey, and they let too many people greenlight too many shows, and they've brought that all back. They've obviously refocused all of that attention. So they really are driven not just by data, by some consumption metrics that they don't share publicly. Reed obviously has been keeping his ear to the ground on the things that need to change in advance of any studio out there that's just with their startup service. So the fact that he's stepping down isn't an indication of anything bad. This has been in place. This plan has been in place for over 2 years. He's been passing down responsibilities to Greg Peters, the guy that's taking over this position as another co-CEO. So you'll still have Sarandos, who's been there forever, and you'll have Peters, who's already been gently brought into that role, just not without the name. So this is a much smoother transition than we saw with something like Chapek or even Andy Jassy, which I'll get into in a second. But this particular move for him is he's stepping down from the CEO position, but he's not disappearing. He's now the executive chairman of Netflix. So he's just sliding his way out, and we've seen a lot of CEOs do that. Bob A mentions growth with no profit. Their profits were down considerably. Regardless of what EPS expectations were, they weren't all that far off. But again, it's going to be much different than a year ago. But in this most recent report, right, in this most recent quarter, Hastings is going out on a very high note, and I have no reason to suspect that there isn't more growth available. One of the things that happened by adding 7.6 million subscribers in this last quarter was the fact that almost 1 million of those, 901,000 of them, came from the US, which is the most profitable market by ARPU. So the average revenue per user. So all in all, I can't imagine this happening. Everything for Netflix is on an upturn. They are not greenlighting everything under the sun. They are carefully now navigating a path and greenlighting certain shows. I imagine you'll see some more culturally questionable takes disappearing from their service as well, because they have to remain more appealing to middle America and obviously their international audience, which they need to continue to grow. But ultimately, and this is a conversation I've been having for a long time, this is the top of the market. You really don't have a lot more room for growth, despite obviously this recent quarter. What you have to do is get more savvy about the decisions that you make. But are they going to go bankrupt? No. I mean, you just watch their stock shoot up over 6% in the last 12 hours. And like I said, this is a much better transition than what we saw with Andy Jassy taking over at Amazon, where you had kind of, what's happened to them over the last year. And because, I mean, they've lost, I think it's $1 trillion, Andre, correct me if I'm wrong, in value.
I think so. And before we move on, we actually have a question pertaining to this topic. We have other super chats. We're going to get through them all, but this one is on topic. Hillis Mallory wonders for $5. Do you think Netflix will start doing theatrical releases with the success of Glass Onion, as it overperformed in the limited run?
Yeah, I believe that's in the future. I mean, if this question is directed at me,
they almost have to. Yeah,
and they need to actually really just live in the idea that they are now a studio, because they are, and take advantage of the theatrical money that obviously people who don't want to go to the theaters will just wait the 30 days that you put it in theater. I think you're going to see it go from a limited release, 1 or 2 weeks, to a full month, and maybe even to 45 days. But I think that at some point in time, they may actually just do a day and date. They can afford to do it. And if you look at the success for Rian Johnson's film, there's no reason not to. I mean, that's where that property was born in the first place. So why not bring it to theaters? And they've missed opportunities to put stuff in theaters that they really should have.
I think they have the capability of putting at least 4 or 5 major features in theaters every year. And then they don't even have to do them as a 30-day thing. It can still be a 60 to 90-day just to keep the theaters happy. But I mean, just alone, there was that one Will Smith movie that did very well on Netflix that probably could have done well in theaters before he slapped Chris Rock. The one with where he's the cop with the orc guy. What the hell was it called? Bright. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Actually, it still probably would have done. It was the writer of that got into a couple of scandals. So I don't know.
Regardless, but my point is they have the facility. If you have the Glass Onion movie and the original film would have done well enough for them. Especially if they're bleeding money and they need some cash real quick. This is what we've been saying about the fucking studios for the last 2 years.
When they get something right, they actually do it better than anybody else.
True.
So for instance, The Recruit is a really good show, and no one else is pulling shows like this off, and any of the other streaming.
Right.
Ash, Evil Dead, another great Netflix show. Their purchase of Lucifer was quite clever.
Yes, well done. From Fox.
So when they get it right, like Wednesday, The Recruit, they do it well. I mean, Amazon did well, I thought, with the Chris Pratt series.
Narcos was one I loved that was on Netflix.
Which one?
Narcos.
Oh, Narcos is a brilliant, but even then, that's a bit it's a bit harsh in some ways. That '90s show and the one that the Glass Onion, not Glass Onion, the
Glass Onion.
Oh, Glass Onion. Again, that's a crappy movie, but a wonderful bit of fluff that worked really well in the context of Netflix. Watching it,
it did a decent performance in the theaters for its limited run, Paul.
Because of its previous,
right?
It did well. I mean, it was.
Well, let me give you another.
That's the thing, and they also did it with Scorsese's film. They let him have a limited run too, because there was no way he was going to let it go straight to streaming.
How did that do on Netflix, though?
Pretty well, I think. It even got nominated for Best Picture, didn't it?
So
it got a few nominations. I know that.
So the thing is, I mean, and Netflix is building a studio in Jersey.
Oh, they took over a military base.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see whether these are plans that they made a long time ago that they're going to have to stop because they're running out of cash. But their shows overall are generally better than anybody else's.
Well, but I mean, stepping back into the movie conversation just real quickly, they are working on the sequel to Extraction. You know, that film that they had on Netflix, very popular. That is one I would expect could get a theatrical release. There's no reason not to. You have, the Hemsworth in it. You have, some of the draws to the box office that, potentially could earn you money. It's going to be, you're making things for your streaming service. But if you release it to the theaters first, it's another pathway to profitability. And as Tom and I discuss all the time, I mean, why are we not seeing that? Why is Disney sacrificing billions of dollars of entertainment to the god of streaming, that their DTC is just nothing but a giant hole that they're filling with money and setting it on fire every few months? That just doesn't make sense to me. But again, this particular thing, the way this is all being done with Netflix, leads me to say that I believe this is more like Tim Cook taking over Apple from Steve Jobs than it is Andy Jassy being, the fall guy over at Amazon. Because there are rumors that Bezos could return to Amazon to replace Jassy. To
do what? Run the packaging division?
No, run the company again.
Oh,
yeah. It would be more fun if he did run the packaging division.
Yeah, maybe it'd be fun. Yeah, I like the creative boxes they come up with sometimes. But anyway, those are my thoughts on that rumor, and I truly believe that Netflix, if they really are trying to become more significant and profitable, they will release the occasional thing in a theater, or more frequently rather than the occasional. And I think that I think that the rumor about them going bankrupt is recycling or recirculating something that came up in 2013.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing how Netflix could go bankrupt, because that's kind of one of those too big to fail scenarios, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, you don't really necessarily, they won't fail, but like the leadership fails and they just get new leadership. Sorry, Andre, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was saying that something being too big to fail, of course, that's a pretty good sign that it's going to fail and be artificially propped up, though. So that's the first major red flag. But yeah, we'll see what comes of that rumor. And Culture, I know you don't have too long, so this is where we usually would go into super chats. But so we have Culture. I want to have your thoughts on this before we run. We're going straight into Alec Baldwin, because the news there are fairly exciting. You will all remember what happened when during the shooting of Rust. There was quite literally an on-set shooting in which Alec Baldwin shot both the camera, or the behind the camera, and the director. I still don't know how he was able to pull off both, but one woman died, which is very unfortunate. And this woman was also working on a documentary which was quite critical to the political cause of Alec Baldwin. So there were some conspiracy theories to that end, that the shooting might not have been entirely accidental. I'm just saying that that's something that is out there, not saying that anyone here necessarily believes in that. But now we have an official charge. because this is now deemed recklessness. And prosecutors have decided to press charges against Alec Baldwin and the armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, because they both violated all the standards of gun safety on set. They will be charged, and there will be a jury trial. Culture, before you go, your thoughts on this?
I honestly am not surprised. The particular DA, they've taken a very careful, measured approach to this. The investigation was carried out over a long period of time. Statements were drawn from many people. The assistant director was already pled out, and will probably as a part of that would be a testimony in any hearing involving these two individuals. This is a tragic accident that, I'm sorry, it just was that. And whether or not, I particularly care for this man or not, or his lack of care. And of course, the armor in particular's lack of care. I don't see a way for them not to have been prosecuted. So I feel like that this will arrive at some form of justice, but none of it will ever be enough because of the loss of life and injury to the director as well. So I don't know what else to add to that other than I'm kind of disappointed in the language being used by the entertainment industry itself when it comes to the trades and the guilds that are involved in all of this.
What do you think they should have done different, or what do they do that you react to, and what should they have done different?
Well, I think SAG-AFTRA's strong statement, essentially saying that the DA in this case in New Mexico, without saying it directly, is insinuating that the AD is incompetent in their job. And calling the AD wrong and so on and so forth. Misinformed is the other one. That's a problem. And I feel like, again, if you're trying to spin this, you say, in regards to this tragic loss of life, et cetera, et cetera. We stand in support of Alec Baldwin, as he faces his day in court or something like that. You have to leave it as neutral as possible. And rather, again, I don't know how that serves the guild any, especially when a lot of people, understand that there's no consistent care by people on that set to prevent the accident from happening. So it is what it is. And as Tom mentioned before, in many places, I feel, as Tom mentioned before, I feel that, the person that's likely to get hit the hardest is going to be Hannah Gutierrez-Reed.
Probably rightfully so, as much as I hate
Alec
Baldwin too, as much as anybody else. Yeah. But I know Andre and I probably have to be careful about some of the things we say, because we do know a few things from certain people who know people, let's say, but like things I've heard about her are not very glowing. In fact, she was fired from The Old Way, which is a movie that just came out recently, starring Nicolas Cage. And one of the main reasons I heard from that is because she had reloaded a weapon on the ground. And that is a huge no-no for many fucking reasons, on top of several other accidents or incidents that had happened on that set. And the things that I'd heard about her were that she's very negligent, very full of hubris. She's not very old, so she has very little experience. Even though her father was somebody who's been in the industry for over 30 years, I think it is. She and him have a very strained relationship, and I guess she didn't really learn much from him, from what it sounds like, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's about the most I'm going to say on that part. As far as Alec goes and his culpability in this, I see him more as a producer, and if he was somebody who was trying to push for people to hurry up and get done and do things and whatever, because that's the other thing we're seeing is a big problem with the situation here, is due to whatever COVID restrictions that were going on at the time. There was a breakdown in the chain of events of how this is supposed to go down, as script and other people have spoke of, since he has worked in the prop department, and other people that have confirmed things that script has said in similar ways about how these things work, whether it's a gun, a knife, a sword, what have you, weapon, they are under the supervision of said person because they are a licensed armorer or a member of that specific prop department that are handling that weapon. And they take that shit very seriously. And it doesn't sound like she was taking shit as seriously as she should have.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to the series of events that led to this gun supposedly coming into possession of the first AD, because correct me if I'm wrong, script, that's not supposed to be the chain of events.
The assistant director is not supposed to be handling any of the weapons.
Yep. Which I suspect is why he pled immediately. So, but.
And my other bigger question from this time, and this is what I posit to everybody else here, is if they weren't even shooting a scene, if this was just a scene where they were just setting things up, why would the gun even have been loaded with blanks to begin with? Well, if they weren't even shooting anything.
Then why would the AD say cold, cold, cold?
Well, I mean, I understand why they were doing a framing test. So they were making sure where is Alec going to be pointing the gun? Is that in frame? Is that in focus? What do we see? What do we not see?
Right.
That stuff's all there and technical. Here's the other part too. And I know a lot of people in the chat are going to get very upset with it, but this is the fact. If Alec Baldwin is playing a character that is drawing his gun and his character is intending to shoot it, guess what? His finger is going to be on the trigger because that's the verisimilitude of the scene. Doesn't matter that he's just rehearsing the scene, or doesn't matter that even if they're filming it, that's what they do. Go back and watch all your favorite movies with people doing guns. You'll see a lot of actors having their finger on the trigger, holding the gun, ready to aim and shoot, but they don't shoot somebody, or they do. That's just what they do. It's part of the film. It's slightly different than in the real world, where you don't put your finger on the trigger unless you intend to shoot. For movies, it's different because the drama is that we don't know as the audience if they're going to shoot or not. That's the drama. So that's why they do stuff like that. They even do the same thing in rehearsals. It doesn't matter. But in this case here, it's very weird that an assistant director is handing the actor the gun, and two, the reports are that the armorer was not in the vicinity at the time that this was occurring.
And I understand what you're saying, script. That wasn't really my question necessarily. It was like, I know he would have the gun for all those reasons. Why would it be loaded at that point? Wouldn't they load it after they were when they were actually shooting the scene? Wouldn't that be why would you have loads in it if you weren't actually rolling, is my question.
Yeah. Well, before that question is answered, though, culture has to step out.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you for being here today, for your insight.
We do have a couple of super chats for him real quick if we can grab them.
Yeah, let's do that.
1123 STR Red Wolf. Whoops, I had it here, and then I think 6 grabbed it too, or Andre did. Hail Andre, Tom, Culture, Paul, Script, and oh my God, 6. This has to be the first time she's fully on stream. Well, she joins us on Mead quite often, STR Red Wolf. But I think this is your first time proper on the morning stream, right?
Yeah, I think I've popped in a few times just to do some promos and stuff. Yeah, but I'm always backstage.
Yeah. And then we have the next one here, which was
I got it.
You got it. Thank you. As I say, I thought it was Christian Delorme. Christian Delorme with 5 Canadian buckaroos says, F. Alec Baldwin. Kudos to the greatness of Tom and Andre. Great representation as a bald man. Great Weave Casino. Love from Canada. Well, thank you, Christian, for that.
Christian Delorme.
And with that, do check out Culture Casino's channel. You got anything to plug real quick?
Did they mean Alec Baldman?
Oh,
is that what they're referring to?
I don't know.
That's why you have me here.
Well, let's see. After this show is the Friday pre-flight show. Hopefully that helps you kick off your weekend even more so than you've just done here, listening to these amazing and incredibly brilliant analysts and analysis. I will be hopefully I'll be doing this Sunday the late night show as well. So thanks for having me as always. What a great week. Right. I appreciate all of you. Love you all. Bye.
Take care, Culture. So Script was just about to answer my question, is would it be normal practice to actually have the gun loaded if you were just blocking the scene?
Well, they would not necessarily have it loaded, but like for revolvers, they have this this kind of all right, so revolvers have this clip that has 6 bullets on it if it's a 6-chamber thing for quick loading. They have another version of that where it's not bullets, but it's just like these little tips that look like the tips of bullets, and it's just got like a rod and it goes onto the extension. You put that in there, and you do that just to block out the light from passing through the holes in the chamber if it's a gun that has where that can happen, where you can tell that it's empty. I don't know why that wasn't used on the set. Probably they couldn't afford it or didn't know or what have you. But they usually do that because, again, they're like, they want to see exactly what the shot is going to look like as it's going to shot when they're doing the test. So they try to match everything they can beforehand, as opposed to doing a guess or speculation, because especially on an independent film, you don't have the time to recorrect. So like, okay, we got a guy, he's pointing a gun at us. We can see down the barrel. We can see it's dark. We can't see anything in there, but we can see that the gun's not loaded. So if we do this take and the gun is loaded and there's either for some strange reason things are reflecting or something's screwing around with the focus, then that costs them time. So it's better to get that done ahead of schedule than take a guess and then jump into it and then try and waste time fixing it when they catch something that they didn't catch in the test. So it's very weird. The fact that they would even have duds, blanks, or anything of that nature mixed in with other rounds, or not separated properly, or don't even have just fake stuff to like legit, like there's no way this thing could fire anything because it's not in there. Yeah, speed loader. Thank you, Perestroika.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was called.
Yeah, they have those things. They've got one where it's 6 pieces, but only 5 of them have a fake tip of a bullet in it. And then they have the reverse of that too, where it's 6, but it's only the back ends of the bullet. There's nothing in the front. And that's for like on a reverse shot. They're going to show a guy, if they want to show a shot of the gun, of the chamber open and the being loaded or what have you.
Right.
But yeah, again, it's like guesswork is really bad in film, especially when you're dealing with firearms or any other weapons. And it doesn't even matter if they're going to be used or not. If they're in there, they kind of want to know exactly what's going on and mark it and be very comfortable with it and that everybody is safe normally. I can only speculate with regards to rust, but the reports that came out, I would say it's looking like, you have 3 people that are incompetent, and one of them has basically done a plea deal to throw the other 2 under more severe charges, even though they're probably the ones that are technically responsible for those 2 people's actions more than anybody. So
possibly, but I think you're right. I think the trio is the responsible parties here. And the armorer is the one who is ultimately responsible for it, right? Like, they're the licensed individual. They're supposed to know the rules. And if the rules aren't followed, they're supposed to call the timeout, right? So at the end of the day, that's what's going to really, really, really fall down to, I think. Now, there are other elements to this story that I think are going to come out if we get to, a trial situation or anything like that, because there was, the talk of the joy shooting or range shooting or whatever they would call it, even though the one investigator supposedly poo-pooed it. I'd heard it from other sources too that did happen, and that's probably most likely the scenario as to how the actual round got mixed in with the fake rounds. Because for those who don't know, the situation as we know it at this time is pretty much that an actual bullet got mixed in with dummy rounds, and it was unrecognizable from the other ones. The armorer tried to blame the supplier, but that went nowhere in an investigation from what I had looked into so far. But the big difference between this and the Crow situation is that, because the Crow situation was that the prop department had actually made the dummy rounds instead of ordering them from a company, and they had loaded them with too much powder, which in basically made it a projectile and like a real bullet, basically, but it wasn't a real bullet, but close enough. This was a different situation. This is an actual bullet. So this is where I can see where there's the big difference, and this is probably why criminal charges are coming into play here, and it's clearly negligence type charges, correct, Andre? And the reason it's like a 5-year sentence because of the gun factor is another part of it too.
Recklessness. That is what it is here. That's the gist of it. Of course, I do not think that anyone is going to spend 1 day in jail. So this is just like, a bunch of things has to happen for 5 years to even be on the table. Like the default things here is 18 months. And then if certain other conditions are met, then it increases to 5 years. So that is in the most extreme of extreme cases. I don't think that anyone is going to actually face any jail time.
I think there'll be
here.
Suspended sentences. You're right.
They're all just going to be suspended sentences all around. And this is also like what's in this plea deal that the one who's probably the most responsible did to rat on the others. He agreed to a 6-month suspended deal as well. So probably it's going to be suspensions all around for everyone is what I think will happen.
What I want to know is, where are the protesters? Where's the independent directors' lives matter people? See, where's the placards?
I'm surprised that we haven't heard enough from the armor community.
There you go.
Reaching out to this, because we had a brief handful of people. We've also had a number of actors, some of which were very wrong in what they were saying out there.
I was going to say, Script, I might know why they're distancing themselves from her. This is like a Juicy Smollett situation. It sounds like from the people I've talked to.
They're just not commenting. I mean, that's the other part too. Like, none of the trades are really talking to some of the legends out there who have worked with weapons to say, like, well, what are the standard operating procedures with regards to this? And
the trades don't know.
Well, there's another reason behind this. And that's because she is a young woman and he is an old white man. That's the difference, is that it's easier to make him a bad guy in the press than it is her, because she will look more like a victim in the situation, because, you know, all she's got to do is shed some tears. Alec has done everything he can to make himself look like a bad guy in this position. That's the thing.
That's even if he is part of the protected class, because he's part of the club. Very much so, but even with
like, you couldn't have scripted it better for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like his lawyers are working against him at this point. Because the first thing, if I was his lawyer, right after it happened, I said, shut the fuck up. Don't talk to nobody but the cops. Go right to your goddamn trailer until I get there. And then from that point on, I'd have been like, don't say a fucking word to nobody, period. Hands down, shut your mouth. Don't say nothing. And then I'll prepare a statement for the family. That's it. Then after that, you keep your fucking mouth shut and you go sit in the Bahamas for a few months and we'll fucking figure this out. Because that would have been his best case scenario at that point. Otherwise, he's done nothing but make himself look like a complete fucking tool in every way, shape, or form he can.
The man's got an ego.
Yep. And the man has an ego, actors have an ego, and the reason we have these safety protocols with weapons is because actors can't be trusted.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, Script, because one of the individuals we talked to specifically said actors are fucking children. You have to treat them like children at all times.
Dude, I know stories of some actors where they've been specifically told, don't touch this thing here, and then they do the scene and they touch it, and then the thing breaks or falls off or whatever, and the entire set, just the crew and director just freak out at the actor for 10 minutes saying, what the heck did we just tell you? And then they have to reset and they have to spend money to get the thing either fixed or replaced or what have you.
We heard a very similar story, yes.
It's what they do. That's why they have them in there. And what's funny is that the assistant director is supposed to be the loudest one on set to control all of that on behalf of the director, so that the director can just focus on directing. And it takes a long time for an assistant director to be a good assistant director. And what we've actually seen here is that in this case, for this film, this guy never broke the bad habits that they had. And it had a ripple effect on other people with other bad habits as well. So
that's another thing I brought up last night that I thought was interesting that nobody has really talked about, even us to this point. Maybe because he was, hit too. But nobody has even thought about what is the director's role in all of this? Because on a set, the director is the captain, right?
Ideally,
and
yeah.
So, like, Script, that's my question is, how has nobody even looked at the director and going, was he the one rushing things? Or the director was a she, I'm sorry.
If he was, that's a producer.
I thought it was a he, yeah.
The director's a guy. The director of photography was a woman who sadly died.
That's what
The director of photography, right.
But her and the director both got hit, is what happened. The bullet ricocheted out of her and into him, I believe.
That's a really good defense for him, though. It's like, I was shot too, so back off me.
But the thing is, he could also bear some responsibility in that. I mean, the investigation has to go that way. It's something that should be looked into, and the fact that we don't read anything of that being the case is suspicious to me. Because, I mean, if I'm looking at it from a legal point of view with a little bit of knowledge of the film industry, like just everyone else, I'd be like, everybody that was physically in that location that day should be under investigation. Doesn't matter if they've been hit or not. We need to find out what the heck's going on. We need to get the most accurate picture of the events in order to find the truth and hold those responsible.
Yeah. Any final words on this before we move on?
No, unless anybody else has anything to say, I don't think, I think you pretty much hit it on the head, Andre, as far as what's going to come out of this. Charges they'll probably get something out of it, but it'll all be suspended sentences, probably a bunch of fines. I don't see anybody actually serving any jail or prison time for this. Maybe the armorer, but I doubt it, because she's too young and she'll just cry on the stand and get out of it. So, I could see this being a circus for the media more than anything. And then at the end of the day, a lot of nothing. Kind of like the Ezra Miller situation, basically. And I don't mean to try and compare the two, because somebody did lose their life in the other situation in this. But at this point, I feel like that's what it'll end up being. It's more of a circus for the media. And at the end of the day, nothing will really come of it as far as actual punishment for Alec Baldwin or anybody else involved.
I think Andre should be punished for it.
He has been punished for it. We've had to do how many shows about it so far?
A few. Yeah, punish the guy who wasn't even in the country at the time. That sounds fair.
No, that's the way things roll, man.
Yeah, deal with it, I guess. All right.
The only thing is
an extradition treaty.
People just have to understand one main thing, and I know Script has expressed this kind of thing before too, and I've tried to say it in certain ways too, is this is not a typical gun situation. I know it's hard for some people to understand that, but it just isn't. A gun in this situation is not seen as a similar situation, like if you were out on a range shooting with your friends or out hunting and somebody got hurt in an accident or killed. It's not the same exact thing, even though it's hard to understand that, because this is a workplace situation. You have a licensed armorer, who's responsible for this. So there's a lot of that kind of thing that's involved with this, that it's a different legal situation than a normal gun crime, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if Script wants to cap that off at all.
Yeah. I'll say this. It's very difficult to prove motive for the result that happened in this case, because there's way more reasonable doubt that nobody wanted anybody to be hurt on this. But there's also a lot of things that show negligence was a high factor as a result. So even if they didn't want anyone to be hurt, they were incredibly negligent with regards to making sure that could be the outcome.
Yeah. With that, let's do some super chats.
Let's do that. Let's start from the very top. We've got Dark King, who sent in an Australian $5. Sorry, Dark King, because he's probably asleep by now in Australia. It says, if Iger becomes president and runs the USA as he did Disney, I expect that he will try to buy Canada and Mexico, with woke reboots to follow. Yes.
Maybe I'm sure that he's going to buy Greenland, because that's something that Trump was laughed at, although it would make all the sense in the world. So leave it to Iger to actually do that and take credit.
There was a joke during the George W. Bush days where George W. Bush wants America to be a nicer, kinder country, so they're buying Canada.
I remember that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 6 a.m. there, so he's probably sleeping already. Brett Cohen said it's in Australia. And he sent this in a couple hours ago, but he's still with us. I hope he heard it. Mario Trillo says, good morning, insane day in these insane times. Well, hopefully it's a sane day. So far, it's been kind of out there. Dark King says, in Velma, Scooby-Doo will be a furry in a dog suit. Don't give them ideas.
Yeah, please don't. Please don't. Let's keep the doggy out of it.
I haven't seen any more, but the reviews have been brutal.
Yeah. So let's. Basically, they've upgraded Scooby from Shaggy's pet to his love interest. They did some race bending in the process here, but like, let's not.
Well,
get
we'll see if that's actually
here.
true or not. Because according to a reviewer who has seen most of the show or of the show, has said that that's not the case. Her name is Gigi, not Scooby. So that was a false rumor.
I don't know.
So we'll
That
see.
was a joke that people took literally.
I have no idea. Dr. Longdongler send in a thumbs up. Thank you so much. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, please do. We got Shadow Dancer the Red Mage who says, wearing her zombie Velma skin suit, Mindy K insults everybody, not just SWMs, but I think he means SJWs. I don't know what SWMs is. But women too. Yeah. Well, it's an insult to everybody. Somebody was bringing up last night how Velma is going to be the show that unifies everybody.
I think the SWM is swimsuit models.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was single white man.
Holy smokes! You must have read the. You must have been making the. What are those in Now magazine? The single white male wants to find.
Actually, no, I was going to say it's single white male. Yeah, that's what it is. Single white males.
Single white male. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Models, because it's like.
See, Paul figured it out.
I did it first.
Because
I did not hear you, Six. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So you were hunting through the personals.
Oh, I know all about the personal ads. All too well.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those shows that I just wonder if it's going to be one of those shows that's too woke for the woke. That's I've heard somebody say. This show's too woke for woke people. Oh, balls. Then we got War Monkey, who's, I don't know if he's a new member, because I swear he's been a member already. I'm assuming it's probably an upgrade. But thank you for that, War Monkey. And we got All Off Van S, who says, woo, we have 6. Yes, we do. We're glad to have her here.
Hey,
Yes.
and also Olaf, he is our newest mod.
Oh, yeah, welcome to the team.
Channel.
That's Six's favorite sticker.
That is my favorite.
Yay. Mario Trillo says, the one good thing about tips, no taxes, baby. Well, I think it depends on the state, doesn't it? I thought some states you have to pay taxes on your tips. I can't remember.
Well, the way things are going, give it time. I mean, if Iger becomes president, I'm sure
I could be wrong. But Christian Delorme says, in the 80s, Mr. Canoehead was my grade 9 humor.
Well, yep. Yeah.
And then Christian says, 4 on the floor. Thank you for my childhood.
Yeah, we were. It was always nice to play the high schools, and the kids were going the Lou and Jaime characters. We drive chicks mad, which is 2 of my favorite Frantics characters. I love those guys, Lou and Jaime. So, yep, awesome. It was always nice to have people scream out our catchphrases. Boot to the head, man.
And then we got the Mexican Iron Man, who says, I just signed in to hear you people. What do you mean, you people?
Yeah. Who are you calling you people?
Says, I am listening while doing a loan file for a client. The name is Mexican Iron Man. Brown Lives Matter.
Emphasis on iron.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah, we're changing your name to Tin Man.
He's not going to be happy about that.
I mean, you're going to get sued. You can't just keep calling yourself Mexican Iron Man. They're going to come after you.
They can try. Action Con says, at Paul, why did YouTube Red fail? I think we got this.
Oh, you got
already.
this.
We did this one already. Okay. And then we got Liam Johnson, who's been a member for 4 months at the Crom level, says, look, I didn't mean to come off so against Helena Taylor. I just think it's pretty bad she wanted Bayonetta 3 boycotted because ruining developers pay. I also truly believe Frost had good intent, but misguided judgment. Oh, I don't think Frost had good intent.
She's a nut bar.
No, I think Frost is one of the most horrible people on the face of this earth.
Wow.
I can
tell just from her demeanor. I know her type. I've dealt with it before.
Yeah, I also disagree that she had good intent. She came from a place of malintent. Absolutely, she didn't want to improve anything. Good intent would be if what she wanted to do was actually improve and move forward for everyone. That would have been good intent. She came from a place of wanting to shame and wanting to cancel for an imaginary problem, well, largely imaginary problem, I should say. And it came in the aftermath of criticism directed at her because she wasn't qualified to have opinions on the matters on which she expressed strong opinions. And then later, she went on in the same rant to explain that, yeah, the reason I'm unqualified is because I'm incompetent. Like all of the stuff that we do here is a whole team that actually do it. But yeah, no, Liam, I don't think that she came from good intent at all. If she had, that rant would have been very different.
Or it wouldn't happen at all. And then because somebody would have had cooler head.
Yeah.
And from what we heard, that probably would have happened had some of the upper people known about it. This sounded like it was something that happened quite quickly and only people on the floor knew about it. But again, that's just a rumor that we had heard. Elf is a member for 4 months. Thank you so much. And then Christian Delorme says, and Tom Connors, thanks for representing the sexy bald man on YouTube. Cheers. Well, I try. I don't know about the sexy ones, but I do represent the balds. And Christian is 4 days without smoking. I want to kill. Oh, well, you know what, Christian? I'm getting to that point. So maybe I'll be joining you in that league soon. So
Eat some
stick
doggy
with it.
treats.
Stick with it.
I can't wait for those streams.
Yeah, you're in the no man's land right now. This is the worst time. I never smoked, but my business partner did. He was also a cocaine user.
Oh,
and he tried to stop both at the same time.
Oh, brilliant!
And I took.
Oh, that's something that usually never works.
And then I said, one at a time, one at a time, please. So he did the drugs first, and I supported him on his smoking for the remainder of his life because I figured, he got off of one bad thing, and I supported him in that. And I said, I don't care if you're smoking. The one downside for him smoking was we'd go to business pitch meetings, and I'd always make sure that he was on the opposite side of the boardroom table because he would nod off after about 40 minutes because he needed to smoke. And I never wanted the client to notice. So I was always prepared to like kick him in the shins or I'd go, okay, time for a bio break.
You know what's sad is the cocaine's probably better for you.
If
you do it in moderation,
that depends.
If you do it in moderation, probably.
It's also illegal.
That's true. Whoops. Go ahead. Dr. Long Dongler has been a member for 14 months at the Midnighter level. Thank you so much. Then we got Michael Carney, who's also been a member for 2 months at the Midnighter level. Thank you so much. Then we got Midnight Sun, who's got a super chat for $6.99 Canadian and says, for next Halloween entry, they should use the Dennis Etchinson script Carpenter championed in the 80s, where Myers is pure supernatural entity. Yeah, I think the Halloween franchise is going to take a break for a while. I have a feeling after that last snafu.
Yeah, it needs to lay down and take a nap.
But we'll see. We'll see. It does need a nap. I agree with 6.
Yeah,
it's a sugar crash. I mean, that's what it needs. It's
too much Halloween candy.
That last one really fucked it up for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, okay, Halloween Kills was a funny joke, but now you're just fucking with us, right? Like, this is not even funny.
Isn't Halloween the one with Jamie Lee Curtis?
Yeah, and that last one really snafu'd it.
And she should have gone down that car crusher with Michael. She was standing right there. He could have reached out, grabbed her leg, and pulled her down in there with him.
Yeah, well, I have yet to run into anybody who said my ending wouldn't have been better. And that's where I said, all you do is just do what you did in Halloween Kills, and you just add the ending of this movie onto that one, and you have, like I said, Jamie sacrifice herself so that both of them are dead. Like you just said, 6, you have a joint funeral for the both of them in the crusher, and then the town never speaks of them again.
Jamie Lee was really good in Everywhere, All the Time, Everything, Nonstop, Everything.
at one.
Whatever the
Yeah.
title was.
Yeah, she was.
She was hilarious in that. Just hilarious.
I like I said, I didn't care for the ending of the film, but other than that, I thought it was
I'm
good.
talking about your othering. All I
I am
said was
othering.
Jamie Lee Curtis. That is the topic of my comment.
Yeah,
Not other.
but she is a bit of a nut job too sometimes.
That's fine.
Do we have any other
I don't
super
like her
chats?
politics, but
We
Yeah,
do
that's what I
not.
mean. Specifically for Paul. Okay, so I don't know how much longer you have here, Paul, but
well, if there's any
did you want to break
comment.
out now? Otherwise, I mean, there's more comments, none specifically towards you. But there's this one that says, just working through the college barn, says, perhaps the issue with the 90s show isn't that the 90s doesn't have a distinct as an identity as the 70s and 80s did. That's not totally true, though, I would say. The 90s had an identity.
I agree with what he's saying, though.
I get what he's saying to a point
yeah.
with, like, I was saying, like,
70s was
I think
far
it's
more
less
distinct.
profound of an identity compared to the 70s and 80s.
I say we might still be too close to the 90s in a way, but yeah, maybe not.
But
I
the
don't know.
70s at least had the tail end of bell bottoms, vests.
Fashion. Yeah.
The fashions were really, really specific.
You know, that's the thing.
The 90s less so.
Well, the weird thing about the 90s, there's some people who will argue that the 90s didn't start until grunge started. But I felt like I remember, to me, it was like 89-ish where you started to have like hip hop come in and that kind of stuff. It felt like there was a nice transition from the 80s into the 90s.
Well, technically, most of the epochs were in the middle of the decades. The 60s didn't end until 75, really.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. See, 90s didn't feel that way, though, Paul, to me at least. It felt like, you know, like you said, because like the 70s still bled into the early part of the 80s and so on as in the past. But the weird thing is when 89 flipped over to 90, it just felt like everything went from, you know, denim jeans and Nikes to day glow overnight. and parachute pants everywhere overnight. It was like, what happened? The 90s are here.
The 90s for me was specifically the start of the internet digital age. That's really for me.
See, that would have been earlier 90s, probably, I suppose.
The what?
What year did that begin?
We started our web company in 98.
Oh, so even later then. Okay.
Yeah, later. But I mean, it's towards. But again, it was Tandy TSR 80s, Apple IIs, the Macintosh. I mean, there's a ton of computer breakthrough stuff during that time. Desktop publishing became huge. PageMaker, laser printers,
Windows 95.
What?
Windows 95.
Windows 95.
I remember how heavily advertised that was.
See, that's the weird thing. The 2000s seemed like they started earlier to me. Like it felt like we were already getting into because I had a cell phone already by like 97, 98 and stuff like that. So like it started feeling like shit was changing then. And the internet really took off, and you had the .com boom.
Yeah, the 90s cell phones were starting to come in on their own. The late 80s, 89 was the Radio Shack brick phone, which was really kind of the first usable phone. So there's stuff that was digitally coming on board.
See, that's kind of where I differentiate is like there was a large part of the 90s that still felt analog, but then there was that cutoff point in the late 90s that you're talking about too, where things all of a sudden just went digital. And then from that point on, it seemed like that's where I kind of felt like the 2000s began for me. And then, it was just a weird era for me. It didn't feel like, so maybe I just argued myself into your point here, just working. So you're probably right. I think you are. Because the 80s, 90s just were like this small encapsulated time that, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the granddaughter isn't pretty good with WordPerfect on DOS and isn't going up and helping Red with his, wretched compact
that's bullshit,
PC.
Yeah.
See, that's hilarious. There's just a crap load of humor around tech support for your grandparents.
Well, that's one thing that people did say they did like was Kitty's rebooting of the computer. You brought that up last night. There was a few comments.
Yeah, but it's way funnier with Red because I lived that.
Yeah.
Red was my father-in-law.
Well, that's true, because that would be like my dad, because at that time, at
Yeah.
that era, he was like, well, just make it do that. I'm like, Dad, that's not how computers work. Like,
Right.
you know, I had to say
Yeah,
that
no,
constantly.
And my mother-in-law said something really famous after owning an iPad for 5-6 years. We went, okay, you got to get a new one because the new software doesn't work on it. Why doesn't this work as long as my washing machine? This is stupid.
See,
So
I had the
for her-
opposite problem with my dad. My dad thought it was like a magical machine. Like it should be able to do anything he wants it to. And I'm like,
Well,
that's just not how it works.
Well,
It's like-
there's that too, but there's this notion where the whole generation doesn't realize that you've got to upgrade your hardware because the new stuff just won't work on. My English washer has been working for 30 years. Why isn't this iPad good for 30 years? So anyway.
What I didn't understand is my dad should have had a cursory idea of how this worked, because he actually installed like the fuel pumps at gas stations, like the whole thing. And I'm like, you already know how, like, a basic knowledge of this stuff. Why don't you understand that this is not how a computer works? Like, I don't get it.
Well, listen, my funny story was my father-in-law, who was just passed away recently, a sweet guy.
Sorry to hear that.
He was VP of development, of medical development at a major pharmaceutical company, and he got, he had the latest computers all the time, the latest IBM XT, the latest Compaq, everything, and he had Symphony and Lotus 123 and Word, and he always had the best thing all through his entire, I don't know how many years of computer usage. And then one day, maybe a decade ago or something, he's trying to do something, and I said, well, you just cut and paste on the word processor. What? You just cut and paste. What is that? Well, that is the raison d'etre of a word processor. You've been using a word processor for 3 decades and you don't know how to cut and paste? Nope. You always just retyped. Every single time you needed something, you would retype it.
You treated it like an actual typewriter.
Like
Yeah.
a typewriter, I was just going to say.
Yeah. I'm going, oh my God. And he couldn't mail a file to us. He printed it out and then ran it through his fax machine to send it to us.
Oh my God.
That reminds me of the time my dad was trying to take a picture of something that he was like trying to take a picture off the phone. I'm like, just have my kids send you the picture, then you send it to me or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but like I was like, what
We
the
were
hell?
always wondering why the financial documents from him looked so much like shit. It's because he just didn't stick the Word document into an email and then send it to us. He printed it out and faxed it to us.
That's precious.
So these are, because I lived this,
Yeah,
I'm thinking, man, what a ton of funny gags there could be between the granddaughter and Red.
Yeah.
That would be an ongoing joke. And I think everyone would have identified with that because the young kids hate, and the surveys show this, young kids hate the lack of knowledge boomers have about computers.
Yep.
So that I think would have resonated with that group. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Paul,
final
for your
thing
being
I'll
here, and we appreciate it. And hopefully, we'll see you again on Monday, if not before then. And
Okay.
you have a good weekend otherwise. And is
Thank
there
you
anything
very
coming
much,
up you want to
everybody.
plug?
You are, and keep me up to date, 6, with your computer adventures.
I definitely will.
And we'll talk about backup because I'm not letting you
Yes.
go unless you get a backup
I'm
device.
as soon as you tell me which one to buy, I'll get
Okay,
it.
we'll talk. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining. All right, let's move on with these super chats.
Yes, indeed. We have Wolven Weaver, who says, I like that name. That's interesting. I know you guys asked, so here's a list of newbie-friendly anime record of Lotus, War, Berserk 1990s. Now, I've heard of Berserk. Monster, Megalobox. Is that how I'm going to say it? Megalobox. Hajime no Ippo, and Ghost Story. And Ghost Story I think I've heard of too. Anyhow, I hope this helps. Well, we will put those on the list of ever-growing anime recommendations. Wolven.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do like an anime watch party or something. Midnight Edge discovers
Andre
anime.
wants to
Let us
torture
know if
me.
you're, let us know if that's something that you'd be interested in, and maybe we can make that happen. Since
He wants me to do reactionary commentary.
Yeah, I'll do it too.
So basically, you can sit there and go, and I go, what the hell is going on?
And
Why did they do
Be a
that?
watch party because we're gonna need you guys to help us explain stuff.
Yeah, because that's what I'll be like. What
So
is going
let
on
us
here?
know. Yeah.
I need more simple writing like 1883 in Yellowstone. Like a script made me feel like, oh, I'm an idiot because I liked 1883.
No, you're not an idiot because you like that.
I fucking loved it.
You're an
I
idiot for
almost
other
liked it.
reasons, Tom.
I know that. That's a bigger conversation that doesn't need to be had. But Jesus Davila sends us in 10 smackaroos and a thumbs up. Thank you so much, Jesus Davila. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet and you're watching the show, please do. It's free. Costs you nothing. We appreciate it, and the algorithm does too. DCB Titan says Mackinson Adobe man. Oh, this would have been a good one for Paul. Sorry about that, because YouTube won't let me send actual nation because jokes are verboten. Moccasin Adobe. Yeah, gotcha. Baker Boy says, am I too late for 6 in the morning gags? No.
Midnight
I don't think 6
in
gags.
the morning.
At least according to her.
Nice.
But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Hillis Mallory says Baldwin. We're gonna cut that for an intro. Now you know that, right? I'm gonna make you sing it.
What?
I have to write. I'm gonna write to the music to it, and you're gonna sing it.
I was just thinking that we're gonna rework that and do like a proper morning theme here. That would be brilliant.
She just stopped the show there. Hillis Mallory says Baldwin. Why did it take so long to charge him? Well, it's not so much that it took so long. They did an investigation. And honestly, some of us are kind of surprised there was charges at all. Because normally in these kind of situations, it's, and I tried to explain this as it's like almost like a workplace accident in most cases, unless there's severe negligence found on anybody's part, then there's a situation. And that could be what we're looking at here is there was some severe fucking negligence on these people's parts. And it's starting to sound that way. Unfortunately, the problem has been in the last few months is sifting through the hearsay bullshit and the actual reports and what's going on. But as far as like why did it take so long, they had to do an investigation. That's pretty much it. Unless anybody else has a better reason.
The wheels of justice grind slow.
There's that. And also on top of it, this is so unlike a normal type of criminal case because there have been so few incidents. And there's also not a lot of investigators or prosecutors that understand what goes on sets because, again, there's been less than 10 I can think of with regards to prop related deaths, not just not injuries, but actual like deaths, and are not like stuntman,
right,
without weapons or anything of that nature stuff. And there's a reason because the safety protocols are very, very detailed, and they're actually made by former prosecutors and investigators and military experts and soldiers and whatnot. Like it's been a while, so. Even then, like I would say the district attorney of New Mexico has got a big job ahead of them because they're going to be learning things that is going to baffle them at first. And then and if they're intelligent, which I assume they are, they're going to understand the situations and realize how bad it actually is. And it's probably going to make them have to reevaluate the some of the choices they've made prior to the announcement of these charges.
Yeah, because I remember when this actually went off, like the whole, not to be punny, sorry, when the whole like situation started, let's say, you know, you and I and a few others have expressed time and time again through that stream that we have to remember this is the first time something like this has actually happened in a long time. So the fact that since the Crow, the protocols have worked in this respect are kind of, you know, it's kind of surprising that there hasn't been more incidences like with negligence involved. I mean, so we have to take that in stride too. But like you pointed out, Script, like it is not abnormal. There's tons and tons of accidents and stuff that we don't hear about at all because they're not weapon related. And that's one of the main reasons I think that we're hearing about this more so.
More stuntmen have died in accidents that have nothing to do with a weapon or a prop of that nature, which is also tragic. There's people that have been run over by cars, fallen out of cars, fallen off of elevator shafts, horrible things that everybody did everything right, but something still went wrong. And that's one of the things and the risks that that the stunt performers and even crews understand. And their entire job is to try and predict everything they can that could go wrong and get out ahead of it before it happens so that they don't have to go through that nightmarish thing and they don't have to report to people's families that someone's been injured or died on a production. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, and in fact, recently, I remember the Deadpool 2 situation, sadly, where the stunt woman died on a motorcycle stunt.
Yep.
And then the last time I remember anything with any criminal charges involved would be the Greg Allman movie.
Was that the train?
Yep, the train incident.
That's negligence.
Huge negligence. Yeah, there was a few people I think who got charged in that situation.
I think the director of photography and the director got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
for that.
because it was I believe the first AD was the one who got killed. So. Yeah, and what the incident was there, real quick, guys, for those who don't know, was they were shooting a dream sequence on a train track with a bed that was over top of a train track. Only they didn't have a permit, and they didn't know the actual train schedule, and they had a train coming, and the first AD went to grab the bed off of the train track and didn't get any help, and she got sucked underneath the train.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. So there was some criminal charges in that one.
Mattresses are heavy. That's the thing, and so. There's so many things that they did wrong with that.
Yeah, that was an incident where there was some criminal charges involved, and I'm sure some people are even serving some time. I have to go back and look at the actual charges and everything that happened out of it. But yeah, that was a really bad case, and it cost a lot of people a lot of money too for civil charges and stuff too. Mm-hmm. That's why, Hillis, these are very touchy subjects, and also you got a lot of money involved too. That's the other thing. When you get people like Alec Baldwin involved too. So that's why I think he tried to take care of as much of that as he could before any of this stuff got way out of hand for him. Then we got Granite Man says Baldwin's big mouth after shooting will burn him. Yeah, at this point, he's been his own worst enemy in that respect.
Yeah.
And it sounds like his lawyers are half the problem from what we were talking about last night on TNT, because it's like normally a good lawyer would be telling you to shut your mouth. But it sounds like to me he's got lawyers that are more affirming lawyers, basically. He probably got rid of any decent lawyer that wouldn't agree with him.
That could very well be. We obviously don't know the inner workings of Alec Baldwin and his legal team, and also what kind of an ego does he have. That is also something that we don't know.
He clearly has a big ego, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It could be, as you said, that he may have gotten legal advice to do one thing, and he could have responded, but I'm Alec Baldwin. I know better. People love me. I have to be tough on this. So, yeah. We don't know.
Well, that's kind of like the Ezra Miller thing, right? Like, we posited for a while when he got way out of control. That's probably because he had pushed most of those people away, or those who would be like, you shouldn't be doing this, had pretty much turned away from him at that point. That's why he had no supervision. Well, and that's what I'm saying, is Alec is one of those people where I could see him if he had a lawyer who was trying to tell him, no, you should do this. He's like, fuck you, you're fired, because it's not what he wants to hear, which, without taking into consideration, it's not, about what you want to hear, Alec. It's about what's good for you, and he doesn't take that into consideration at all, I don't think. I think he's that narcissistic.
Yeah, that could be.
And we've seen that in the way he talked to his daughter in that phone message and shit like that, and just the way he's outburst in the past.
Ireland is not a great kid either, so.
Regardless, I mean, I've gotten into it with my kid too, but I don't know if I've ever said shit like that. I mean, I've yelled at my kid, but I don't think I've
Some of the stuff that Ireland has done, but prior to that message, I would say Alec is shockingly restrained in that measure, because this is a guy who, when his daughter was born, he loved her so much that when the paparazzi got involved and got very close to the point where they almost harmed his child, he let loose and defended her rather violently, and a lot of people were very much on his side, because they put a child at risk, and that's how he kind of treasured her. And then things kind of went a little south when his divorce to Kim, and then she's a Hollywood child and in a very Hollywood area, and they do Hollywood things to get back at their parents if there's not any agreement between those two. And I don't know all the specific details. All I know is that I remember something happening, and it got back to Alec, and he was embarrassed, freaked out, and then when he learned more about it, he was even more angry and embarrassed. And I'm not defending Alec Baldwin in that case, but I will say that I think the industry and his family dynamics that have gone on over the last decade or so with his rise in popularity and fame have definitely ruined ruined whatever humanity he originally had prior to that.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say I can't say the same even still, because we don't know what the hell it was that set him off, but we sure remember him being set off. That's the problem.
Oh yeah.
So Marksman 11-7B says, will the fact the gun went off before factor in? Okay, so what Marksman of 11-7B is talking about here is this. I don't know for sure, but this was reportedly possibly one of the weapons involved in the old way that they had reported 2 guns had gone off. And we don't have specifics on what the situation was with that. So what they were implying, though, is that they may have had faulty pins or something like that, is what I guess I'm getting
Or
at
a
here.
faulty hammer. Yeah.
Or a faulty hammer. Sorry, that's what I meant. But like, yeah. So, and this is kind of where I think Baldwin was freaking out about my finger wasn't even on the trigger, because this was explained to us by somebody we did talk to behind the scenes, where they did talk about there is certain ones of these older guns where all you have to do is basically pull back the hammer, like Script just corrected me, and if it's hard enough, it will set the gun off. Like, you don't have to pull the trigger, nothing. It doesn't even have to be a full-on cock hammer. It'll just the slightest little flick. And I could see if somebody's playing with the hammer, like just flicking it like you would, like a kid playing with a fidget spinner or something, that the fucker would just go off. And in that respect, that's what
vintage guns too.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So like, I don't know if that's the situation. I'm just speculating on that, but that was what we had heard from multiple reports. Actually, is that that these guns were actually known for that, I guess. And why they weren't pulled
during the trial. That's for sure.
And why they weren't pulled from use in the first place is beyond me. That's what I can't fathom here in that respect. DCB Titan says, I've heard it was a dummy round in the gun, a revolver, dummy bullet, no powder, blank, no powder, no bullet. They found live rounds in the bandolier in the box of dummies during the investigation. Yeah, I don't know about the first part of this. From what I heard, she was struck by a bullet. And that's the same bullet that ricocheted off of her into the director. Because there was only one bullet fired. And
yeah,
that's
they found some in.
That's what's caused.
Costumes.
Yeah, that's what caused the investigation. And this is where I'm not so sure about this whole Joy shooting thing is not true. Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me as to how real rounds would have gotten mixed in with these other ones if they were using these guns. And it's pure negligence, right? Obviously. I'm just saying that's the only thing that makes sense.
The fact that the trades reported that real rounds got into the costumes. So, like, there were rounds in the belts, the cowboy belts that were like real live rounds in the cowboy belts for Jensen Ackles' character. There were rounds in a satchel, I think. And it's like, well, there shouldn't be any real rounds anywhere near the costumes. And on top of that, again, actors have no reason to check costumes other than to make sure that they fit. So it's very.
Well, and then my question would be, where did the costume department or who picked them up and put them on? And that's the thing, is that'd be my question.
Someone could have picked up the gun belt, put it on, filled it with some live rounds, went and gone, shooting somewhere, and then forgot to remove whatever they didn't shoot, and it got placed. That's also negligence, because again, nobody should be touching costumes or anything.
Basically, that's hours. Right there is what I guess I'm getting at here, is regardless of what happened surrounding this, that's what it sounded like, was that these guns were not as secure as they were supposed to be. So if the belts are also involved with that, considering they're probably vintage belts, I would assume so. Unless they would actually make them for each time. I don't know if you would make one for each time, but that's up to the costume department and however that works out. I don't know. But you would know that better than me, Script, since you worked in the props. But would the gun belt be considered more of a prop than a costume part?
Nope, it's a prop. It's a costume piece. I mean, technically costumes and props are interchangeable to a degree, but because again, some props you can wear, some you don't. Like if you put a pencil in your front breast pocket, or you have a pocket protector, it's a prop and it's also a costume piece. So,
well, and I just asked this too because a lot of this shit is meticulous as fuck. Like you have people who this is their job.
Yeah.
To make sure the shit is the same from shot to shot to shot. So like it's not like it's we're fawning over stupid little details. No, this is what they do.
Costumes and props work hand in hand. If certain things, like for instance, on a Batman movie, you'd have like the utility belt is a costume piece, but it's also a prop. So you have those two people working hand in hand, and how that's going to work. And all that type of. It is complicated, but it's complicated more so to explain. But when you actually do it, it is much smoother because people know the role. So if the prop department's like, oh, I've got this thing that's going to work as a costume piece, they work with the costume designer and the costume department to make sure it all, it fits the regulations that are required for safety and protocol. And also the other part too is sometimes they care about comfort. So you can take a look at, say, Masters of the Universe. Meg Foster's bustier was made out of fiberglass. It was costume and prop just because it required a team to get it on there, but it was also elaborate. It didn't move much. It was stationary, and it also could hurt because it's made of fiberglass. So yeah, they had two different protocols that were for that particular piece.
Yeah, and no one of consequence. Yeah, you're probably right. I've read so many different reports now that I get stuff discombobulated. So yeah, this is probably more correct. But I'm going to go with you on that one. But yeah, so with that, let's keep moving on with the super chats. Sean Carter says, people say her not being on the set absolved her. It actually makes her more guilty. That gun should have been inaccessible, sorry, to anyone but her. Yes. And this is the
normal
point
parameters, correct.
Yeah, multiple people have made, including script. No one of consequence says, I wonder if Baldwin would have checked the gun if the scene called for him to turn the gun on himself. Well, that's an interesting point. But this is something.
Script, you have addressed this point many
I was just going to say that.
Real quick, because we have to move on from this. So real quick, what would have happened if he had checked the gun?
The gun would have been taken away under normal parameters. The gun would have been taken away from him immediately, and you would have had to have been. The gun would have had to have been checked and reset with the actor, the director, the first assistant director, the prop master, the armorist, and anyone else in that shot would have to visibly see it first and know that it was safe before they went back to the scene. If any actor messes around with a prop, doesn't matter if it's a gun or a knife or whatever, in a way that is not instructed by the armorist and confirmed by the director of that's what they need done, the item is usually taken away and they start all over again. Because again, its safety is paramount in those situations. Even let's say that there was a bad armor and Alec Baldwin still checked it. It would be the responsibility of the director and the first assistant director to call the armor and be like, what the heck are you doing? He's checking his gun. Is he supposed to be doing that? I don't care. Reset it. Let's go again. That's also their job too. They have to get involved with it. No actor is ever treated as if they're as responsible with the gun as the armor. Keanu Reeves learns as much as he can about those guns, but he is always going to defer to the armor on set, then take and say, yes, this is the thing. If he even sees someone else doing it, he'll probably call them out and get the armor involved to, not have that other person dick around with a gun. That is how it kind of works. It is not the same as in a real life where if you're in your home and you hear a home invader and you want to check your gun to make sure that you're ready to defend your home, that's not the same as on a movie set. You are individually responsible for it. On a movie set, you are one of many people responsible for it, and everybody is responsible for it. It doesn't even matter if you're not even touching it, because if you see something messed up, or whatever, and you don't report it, you are just as culpable as the person that did it.
And I've seen a lot of people, I don't want to say not understand, but they really question this and they don't understand why this is this way, I guess is the best way to put it. And it really boils down to responsibility. And you're right, Script. This is the funny thing. And I think a lot of these actors that are going out there talking about what they have done on the set, or what they're always checking the gun and they're always doing this, that, and the other. I don't know if they're really necessarily being honest about it or what situations they're talking about, because like what you have said, we have had multiple people talk to us behind the scenes that, like I said, I can't be too specific because it'll give away some certain aspects of who they are and they'll probably be pissed. So I will say this, but we've heard the exact same stuff that you have said verbatim, almost, in a sense that, like, yeah, props and guns and weapons and are all treated that way, and that they are very scrutinized by the person who's responsible for them, because actors and other people always want to pick them up and play with them. And they're like, no, get the hell away from them, because that's, their responsibility if something goes wrong.
Yep.
And that's the last thing they need happening, is like a gun, that was messed with, hurting somebody, or a knife not retracting correctly. and again, I'm trying to be careful with how I say this, but yes, I've heard from more people what you have said that I actually believe that work in these departments, these specific departments like you have worked in, and said the same fucking thing you have. So anything these actors are out there saying is either convoluted, mixed up bullshit that they're mixing with their personal lives, like you just said, you know, in with what they're doing in movies, or they're mixing in what they've done in the training sessions at the gun range with what they've done in the movies. Because yes, I've heard consistently what you have said time and time again about this, and that's where this whole thing breaks down to me, is that this does not sound like the protocols were followed.
Yeah, and for an actor, they have a very very valid reason for, like, I want to get a feel of this prop. But the thing is, it's done under the instructions of the person who is responsible for that prop. So if it's, like, for instance, a lightsaber, well, guess what? The person who is teaching them the moves for the sword is instructing them how to get comfortable with that prop. Oh, I just remember this. There is a documentary on a movie called Shoot 'Em Up, which is totally about guns. They have a great documentary about what they did with the guns in that film and how they were used. Go watch that. That's pretty standard. They'll have like the rubber gun, they'll have the replica, they'll have either a real vintage one or what have you. And under the supervision of the armorist or the person responsible for that particular weapon, the actor is allowed to get a feel for the weapon so that they can develop how their character will use it and the reflexes, and if they're doing gun tricks and what have you.
Yeah.
They are taught that way before they even get to shooting. And then the idea is that while they're being instructed of that, they are learning that particular gun safety protocols and getting refamiliar. And if this is the first time with a gun, they're getting taught the gun safety protocols. If it's something that they've done before, they're getting basically a introduction and refresher of the use. Because again, when you're offset, you're not doing anything with a gun there. And if you own your own, you have your own habits that you have, and you have to break those habits in order to fit them within the studio's requirements and the armor's requirements, unless you're a very, very safe person, in which case, ideally, your habits overlap, and so you don't have to worry too much about that. So, but again, more actors than not, still have that childish curiosity when it comes to props.
Yep, and that's what I've heard too. And that's another reason why, going along with what you just said, Script, that I was told that a lot of times that's why they work directly with the more so with the stunt department, and or it's better when they have somebody who's part of the quote unquote cast, but it's actually somebody they can insert, let's say, because they already know, because they've worked with them and they know the protocols and all that kind of stuff. So like, without giving too much away, let's say a serial killer in a movie. Okay. Well, it's somebody that person who works with that prop already knows. So they know that they've already worked together many a time. Right. So there's a rapport there, and they're already a stunt performer working with somebody with a weapon, so they know the protocols and stuff like that. That's another thing I've been told too, is they'd rather work that way than with standard actors too. So, yeah. But this is what I was talking about, Maverick, to finish this up. The George Clooney saying shit like this is kind of, in my opinion, inaccurate, and probably what's giving a lot of people misconceptions about this whole thing. Because he said in a quote, "Every time I'm handed a gun on the set, every time they hand me a gun, I look at it, open it, I show it to the person I'm pointing it to, I show it to the crew." Now, this may be partially correct, but he's probably leaving out the fact that he's doing it under the supervision of the armorist and probably the assistant director and stuff, I would assume, right? Script?
Actually, I would say the armorist did it first, and then the armorist handed the gun to George, and he said, "Do what I just did," and that's what George did.
Probably.
Because that's usually how it is.
That's what I'm saying. So they're leaving out certain aspects. So,
yeah, and the actor is never 100% fully responsible.
Lofty, this is going to be a big question in the case. This right here, I think, is going to be one of the biggest points in the case, is who told the armorer to leave the set. And at that point, when the armorer was told to leave the set, why didn't the armorer shut everything down instantly?
And take the guns.
Yep. That is going to be the big point of the case right there, I think. We'll have to see how that turns out in the end, but I think that's a big point. ActionCom says, in the case of the Crow, the dummy round fell apart inside the gun and the lead got jammed in the barrel. When they loaded it with blanks, it pushed the lead through and it met its mark. This is pretty much there's a little bit more to it, but the main culprit was because the prop department actually made the blanks and they didn't get them from an actual dealer, was part of the issue, because they had put too much gunpowder in them. So it basically just made it bullets. Yeah. for lack of a better term. And then we had Neil, who's been here for 7 months at the Edgelord level, says, keep up the good work, Midnight's Edge. Seriously, you guys make my days a lot better and are making an impact. Also, F Velma. Makes us Indians look bad. Yeah, we talked to Neil a little bit about this on our member stream the other day. So if you want to get in on those more candid conversations with us, become a member of Midnight's Edge, right, Andre?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I will say that on behalf of all Indians everywhere, Neil did express his displeasure with the series and its portrayal of Indians.
Maybe that was where I heard it's too woke for woke people. Maybe it was somebody said it on that stream. I know somebody said it. I'm trying to remember so I can credit them.
Indian people generally aren't the wokest.
No. But I think somebody said it on our member stream is what I'm saying. Yeah, we were discussing that. Yeah. Marksman 117B says, same show Frost did her rant. It started her showing up and saying we were going to grade the asses of female game characters. She picked that bit. Oh, really? Okay. I did not know that. Chris, I didn't watch the whole fucking show, and neither did anybody else for that matter.
No. Why on earth would you watch that? Or would anyone watch that?
Like, it got so low of ratings that it was like the lowest rated network in all of the networks of the 200 some odd plus networks there are out there.
We have more viewers right now than they had on average.
Yes. That is not even being hyperbolic in the least. Master Clockwork says the mid-90s brought us into cyberpunk age. Yes, it did. But that was kind of that came out of the 80s, though, didn't it, Andre?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm trying to think of the author of that one book, that the Billy Idol album. Shit. Now I'm drawing a blank here. You know, you've referenced it 100 times, the cyberpunk album that Billy Idol did.
William Gibson.
William Gibson, yes. Yeah. Wasn't he kind of one of the first big proprietors?
Yeah, that would have been Euromancer.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. Yes. Yeah. Then we got Mecha J, who says, some are already trying to make the Baldwin shooting trial political, claiming the judge who charged Baldwin of a certain elephant. This is what's going to muddy the water even more.
Exactly. And you can just bet that they are going to use that as part of the defense. Like, how dare you charge a good man like Alec Baldwin? Well, it must be because you're a conservative.
He doesn't even like guns.
Well, the judge doesn't make the charges. They make the ruling. It's the
exactly.
The state is making the charges.
The DA would be the one to actually do the charges, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other part too is like we really shouldn't know the political affiliation of any judge, because that muddies our perspective of their judgment as well, right?
To a point, but I don't know how. Yeah, I've never really paid attention to it, voting for judge or sheriff and stuff like that. Yeah. So I don't know. Sonic times 2 says Cobra Kai got renewed for season 6. Yes, we discussed this at the top of the show. We were excited. Yay. Megan has been greenlit for a sequel. Thoughts? Yes, this happened earlier this week. Sonic times 2. I'm not surprised. Honestly, I'm sure they were kind of working on a sequel. I think I even seen an interview with James Wan, and I don't know if it was one of the producers or Blumhouse himself, or Blumhouse, however you say his name.
Blum?
Yeah, it might have been. I can't remember who it was with, but they were even talking about how this was already kind of set up for a series. Like, this was, they kind of knew that.
Megan versus Megan.
Well, I mean, these are the same people who kind of were responsible for all the Conjuring stuff too. When you get to James Wan, and then they said this came out of a whole thing of like, what kind of horror movies do you guys want to make? And he's like, we got on the concept of killer dolls, and then it just led from there. And I mean, it's an inspired concept. It makes sense. It's the right timing. It's exactly what I said was wrong with Child's Play, and they could have made a better movie out of it. And it's been, I don't think it's had hardly any fall off at the theater. It's had like 30-40% each weekend here, so it's staying steady. In fact, I think it'd do better if it had more screens to be in, but that's just me. Everybody who's seen it has pretty much liked it, so I'm not surprised at all it's getting a sequel. It makes complete sense. In fact, I think they said it'll be with us already by 2025. They're already in heavy pre-production, so that tells me it was greenlit before the announcement was even made.
I would have imagined that they already had the script ready to go. If anything, I'm surprised they're taking that long.
Well, that's what I was saying. Is it sounded like from what James Wan was talking on that interview, they already kind of had, like, even people were saying, I haven't seen the movie myself yet, unfortunately, but even people said it's kind of set up for
Yeah, I would
more.
imagine
So,
that
yeah.
we'd have that sequel already next year, to be honest. Kind of like Ghostbusters, that's coming the end of this year, that hasn't even started filming. Megan 2 is not something that really should require that much in special effects or anything. It should be one
Well,
that you shoot, and
this is actually a little bit bigger
emphasis
project.
on that much.
I was gonna say it'll probably be early 2025 if I had to take a guess, like now this time 2025. So it'll be just over, you know, just around 2 years exactly. So that 2-year turnaround time on a movie like that, especially considering it's like 2 or 3 times the budget of most Blumhouse movies, that's not too bad. Because it is pretty heavy special effects. Because believe it or not, I watched a making of Megan. A lot of it's practical effects. A lot of it is, but that's time consuming too with the puppetry. And there's some CGI, and they do a large swath of a mix of how she's put together. And it's kind of neat to see because it's kind of the way movies used to be made. It's like, oh, wow, they're actually doing that instead of just throwing in a CGI character. Because the only parts of her that are CGI is when she actually has to do anything that's way out of the range of the actresses and stunt women. Or like some of the stuff on her face once in a while in certain scenes, I guess. But outside of that, it's all practical puppets, practical actress, all that stuff. So
yeah.
Even the where she's running on her hands and that is a person doing that.
Yeah.
It is a person doing it, though. It's not CGI.
It just doesn't make sense why a robot would do that.
No, it's just the whole like predatory thing. I think she's mimicking the dog from earlier in the film. I haven't seen it myself though yet. So, like that's the whole AI part of it is that she keeps evolving or whatever. So, or at least, however, her killing skills and whatnot. So yeah, so a lot of people are excited for Megan 2, and I'm not surprised. But we'll be with a 4 Megan. Because they have it's M3 GAN now. So yeah, anyway. Aaron Pipe says Alec knew nothing about guns and was too arrogant to have interest in learning anything about them. Were there any similar incidents in the 40s, 50s? Oh yes.
God,
they used to use fucking
no deaths, but a lot of accidents.
Well, I'm sure there was quite a few deaths, a lot of horse deaths,
not really,
especially horses.
Horses
weren't worth anything.
I've heard plenty of stories from people like Clint Eastwood and stuff in interviews where they talk about using actual weapons on the set. You had directors who would come in with fucking guns and set them off. Like John Milius was one who would do that all the time. Wasn't it on? Was it? I can't remember what movie it was, but they put gun. Was it Kubrick or Friedkin who had hidden guns around one of the sets and had them going off so that it scared the actors for, I can't remember what the hell movie it was, but they were real fucking guns. And there was this whole talk about, I remember Clint Eastwood was going off, I think it was Clint Eastwood, about this one bit where he's like bitching about how much movies cost to make because you have a stupid situation where somebody will come in and they'll build this whole new window with a glass plate with a squib so you can do just a simple shot of a bullet shot through a gun, from a gun, shooting through a window. He's like, we'll just walk up and shoot the fucking window and shoot it. Costs us nothing in comparison. He's just talking about that's how they used to do it back in the days. They'd actually just shoot the window, like off screen, and there's tons of times.
They're doing the spaghetti westerns, yeah, because those were not Hollywood.
Yeah, so like a lot of times those are like, yeah, you'd be surprised. And who's another director that, what was that movie they made where they actually had real fucking ammo in the guns? Can't remember now what it was.
There's so many.
I know.
Every time you actually need to shoot at something and not humans, it's like so much easier just to shoot for real.
The thing is they also don't, because more often than not, the person that's shooting it is doesn't matter how good of a marksman they are, they can always miss, and they don't like risking that.
Was it Coppola on the Deer Hunter, Lofty? You might be right. That could be. Sorry.
Maybe I got to remember the Deer Hunter.
Well, this is the thing we got to remember, and this is what we brought up many times. Is like The Crow was the first time where they stopped using actually. Like, a lot of these rules started coming into play, where it's like, yeah, no, we can't be fucking around no more.
Well, more rules started. Yeah. I mean, there's already a lot of rules prior.
There
to that,
was, but yeah.
General. But the other part too is they just had more safety stuff, protocols brought in, because again, The Crow is technically an independent film as well. And again,
I thought it started under Warner though.
Oh, I think Warner came in later. I think
Because
Warner
then they
had the
sold it
rights
to
and then it
Mirror.
was
You might be
independent
right because
studios
they
that
sold
would-
it to Miramax. You might be right. Yeah.
because I think Warner was just there as a distributor, and I think it was independently done. And then that's kind of like in the similar sense that Star Wars was back in the day. But yeah, like Hollywood studio stuff. It again, the accidents usually come because one or more persons violated the already established rules, and there have been a lot of them. But yeah, like on Gunsmoke, they had tons of gun regulation there, safety regulation protocols. Same with Have Gun Will Travel and the Rifleman. They weren't messing around. They a lot of the studios would rather, because again, it all comes down to control. So a lot of studios would rather have an electronic squib to break a glass bottle or put a hole in a glass window than risk, a stunt guy or a marksman trying to do the same thing, because again, there's too many variables when a human's involved. But when you have it mechanically done, you know exactly how it's going to go with a little bit of variation. But you know, if we frame it here, if we put the camera here, we frame it here on this object, we know it's going to break. We don't know how it's going to break, but we know for sure it's going to break. Where if they had someone try to shoot it, there's always an off chance that they might miss, because a bullet doesn't always behave the way you expect it to.
Yeah. And then on that note, Aaron Pipe says, did Hall just grab a weapon or did Armorer hand it off to him?
It was
We
handed
don't know
to
for
him.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it should have been, anyway. Maverick Christian says, I mean, every time I'm handed a gun or a gun that holds 6 cartridges, you point it at the ground and you squeeze it 6 times. Clooney said nothing. It's just insane not to. Or noting, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, the difference between what you would do as a responsible gun owner in your private life and what they have to do on set.
And Mario Trillo says older guns lose their value if they are modified and just like most props are rented out. However, modern ammunition caps are made harder to fire. Well, here's the other thing is even whatever value these guns would have lost after that, most of the time when they're decommissioned, they're sold at an auction anyway. So they probably make twice as much as they would have if they were just sold as a antique, because now you have the gun that was in this movie and that movie and this movie and that movie, so that adds value to it. But once they sell those, they're completely taken apart, because I know a couple people have contacted me who bought like guns from like Die Hard and other movies and stuff like that. So yeah,
Can't be used. Yep.
Yep, exactly. Let's see. I think that's all we have on that stuff. So this will actually get us into the last story we have, and then we'll finish off the super chats. Hillis Mallory says, so there is this rumor of a new Tron film, Daft Punk coming out of retirement for this. Well, it's actually not a new rumor. This has actually been something that's been in the works for a long time. And our good friend Cameron Pasha has actually talked about this quite a bit. And I think he actually did a post on his Patreon about this new quote unquote rumor, but this is actually something that's been in development for a while. There's been, they were trying to do a Tron franchise when they revived it with, tried to revive it anyway, with Tron Legacy and the series that followed that Cameron Pasha had worked on. And then that kind of went downhill. And then ever since then, Tron kind of fell off the map when Disney bought Marvel and Star Wars. They didn't really care anymore.
But they didn't need it. Yeah.
And then that was until Daft Punk decided that they wanted to produce a third film, because that, of course they had their soundtrack for the second film, I'm sure was a huge hit for them. But then they broke up. And then that was the last we heard about a Tron 3 for a while. And then all of a sudden Jared Leto's involved. And this was probably, I think the first time we heard about this was at least a year or two ago. But it had kind of been quiet since, but of course COVID had happened. So that's probably another thing that got in the way of development. But now we're hearing again that things are moving along. And from what I've read and gathered, it sounds like they might actually be working from the original script that was the idea for the third film initially. That's where the Ares bit comes from, because that's what it's being called as of now, is called Tron Ares. But we have yet to see what's going to come of it. But I'm curious to hear what you think about that, Andre, since I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. And then
we don't really know
script too.
Really, all we know about this right now is the director. We know that it will be directed by...
Yes, that's the progress it's made. Sorry, yes.
So now it has a director. And I would imagine that with the new director, maybe they're going to recycle something from before. But I think that under the guise of this new director and star Jared Leto, it will be significantly reconfigured from what it was. Are Daft Punk coming out of retirement? We don't know. I would hope so. But then again, I would also imagine that the director would see this as... again, I'm just guessing. I haven't spoken with him. The director is Joachim Rønning, countryman of mine. I've actually met him.
Yeah.
And he worked on some fairly big Norwegian movies, and then he worked on the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean film, which wasn't the worst one at all. And from there, he's directed like other huge things. He's in the Disney stable, so and he's also married into the Hearst family. So he is someone that has done really well for himself. And him taking on this, I would imagine that he's going to have two things here. One is going to want to put his own stamp on it, but at the same time, he's going to want to preserve the legacy, which is something that both previous movies did. Now, does that mean that he's going to ask Daft Punk to come out of retirement? I don't know. That may be too tied to the previous movie. So I think he's going to want to go in a slightly different direction than that. So who knows what he will do. I'm not too worried about the director, but I'm just thinking with Jared Leto's track record, does he have like a fan base who is going to show up for this? Or is the movie going to be extra ridiculed because of it? I'm not worried about him being in it, though. I mean, we saw from Blade Runner 2049 or whichever year it was that he's going to go completely into it, whichever role he is. We know that he goes complete method. So I think that he'll be fine in the movie, but will his off-screen persona and... So
you're saying that Jared Leto's going to be the first person to actually get his cyber implant?
Maybe.
Maybe. I think that's certainly
for a movie
anyway, but I'm worried about like how much is his presence going to damage it right away.
He'll be like, I really wanted to be in the computer, and they told me the only way is if I had a chip in my head.
So yeah, but what I'm thinking
it's Morbin time.
He was a failed Joker, and he was a
failed
Morbius. Even if the movie was kind of fun.
It's Morbin time.
Well, I think because again, the rumors of Jared Leto's involvement with Tron came a few years before Blade Runner came out.
Has it been that long already? I know it's been a little while, but damn,
it's been a while. And the rumors is that he's supposed to be playing Bruce Boxleiter's son, which I disagree. I don't think should be the case. Jared Leto is not likable. He doesn't have, as Paul says, the magic jelly, because he's been acting for 30 years and. Everything that he's been in that's been any good, he's a supporting role in that.
Yeah, he's more of a character actor, really.
Yeah,
he's not even a very good character actor because his range is kind of mixed. All over.
That's kind of like what I mean.
Yeah.
How bad is
I have a hard time arguing with that.
For the movie?
No, that's the funny thing is, I'm curious to hear what Six thinks of this. If she's even a fan of the original, I don't know. But that's the thing that's turning me off of this is Jared Leto's not selling it for me. I really don't see what he's going to add to this affair. In the end of the day, I just don't. As far as another Tron film, sure, give me another one. But am I like overly excited for it? No, I have a feeling, and this is what I said last night, is that I have a feeling that this is just going to be like another Terminator or Alien situation where we got two decent movies and the rest of it from there on out is them just struggling to try and make a franchise out of something that clearly wasn't meant to be a franchise.
That is my worry too. I do love me some Tron though. I mean, I like the first one. Tron Legacy is one of the best experiences I ever had in a movie theater because it was just I can't describe in words how much I loved seeing that movie. I had a better time.
It was really neat how they utilized going from 2D to 3D.
That was perfect. That's some of the best use of. That's the best use of 3D I have ever seen is in that movie. And they kind of like made it work exactly as you said, Tom, because there you had the transition from the real world to the 3D, to like the computer world. And the transition from going into 3D there was absolutely spot on.
Yeah, it was a very good use of it, and it really enhanced the viewing pleasure of the film and the way that the world looked really added to that. And it was it was my first real 3D experience, and not being red and blue glasses. You know what I mean? So that was to me also a little mind blowing in that respect. That was my Avatar at that time. Like I could give a fuck about it.
To me, I don't think that Avatar topped it.
Because that was one of the reasons I got a 3D TV, was like those kind of movies. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm getting into now. But 6, were you ever a fan of the original Tron? Does any of this news get you excited?
Not really. Tron it's a good movie, but it doesn't blow my skirt up. Jared Leto, on the other hand, blows my skirt up. But I'm more of a fan of 30 Seconds to Mars.
Yeah, this is why he's got a cult.
Yeah, he speaks to the 19-year-old 6 who had a thing for skinny boys with long hair. He's got that rock star look, the eyeliner.
There's your answer, boys.
He's not a good actor. I love Morbius, but he's not why. Morbius was a great movie, almost in spite of him. I'm not quite as on the Morbius was a good movie, even though it sucked train as much as Tom is, but I'm not gonna seek this out at all.
Yeah, I just like it for how bad it is. Like it's as Vertical Horizon, Morbius was glorious because it rhymes with glorious. Yes,
that's right.
I have no illusions of how good or bad it is. It's just, yeah, it's more of a fun. Like I'm part of the meme. Yeah. I'm part of the meme. You know what I mean? Like I get it, you know, but with him personally, like, yeah, he's never done anything for me. He's my least favorite Joker of all time. I get it. 6. I know that's part of the reason he's a big deal is because he has a cult literally of people who follow him because of his, you know, days as a rock star.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's a cult leader too, isn't he?
Yeah. He's got his own island and everything.
I mean,
more than Ezra. He's actually got it down.
That's what I mean. I mean, it'd be perfect if you get like him and Ezra in the movie at the same time, since Hollywood wants to redeem.
I don't know. I think that would be like a battle, like a immovable object meets unstoppable force kind of thing.
I don't know. It's Bob Iger's Disney.
I don't know.
And Jared Leto, he's also vegan, and we're all kind of half starving to death anyway. So.
But I do kind of like have one question about that though, which I think it's basically that just occurred to me, and it's this: we've been wanting a Tron Part 3 for many years now, and the reason that it didn't happen is twofold. One is that the first one didn't live up to Disney's expectations. It was just borderline. It wasn't bad enough that it should, or didn't perform little enough that it should kill the franchise. But it also didn't perform well enough to guarantee a sequel. It was right there in the middle. And then at the same time, Disney acquired Marvel. And then they figured out, hell with it. Like, just put money into Marvel and we'll be fine. And financially, it was the right decision. It was a decision that was made by Bob Iger. Now, Bob Iger is back again. And Marvel is sliding. Could this be that they're trying to diversify from Marvel? Because they must know that Star Wars ain't coming back anytime soon. What say you to that?
I think that's a possibility. Because, I mentioned this yesterday, I think it was, that as soon as they bought Marvel, Tron and, as soon as they bought technically Star Wars, Tron was done. They gave up with Tron. And then the same thing happened, of course, with John Carter of Mars. They gave up on investing in that property.
But that did flop, legitimately.
That did flop, yeah. I mean,
yeah. So that wasn't happening anyway.
It was too much movie in that movie. That's why I think there's.
Yeah, Andrew Stanton, the Pixar guy who directed it, he blew it. I know there's some people who mistakenly think that it was Disney's fault and that Disney marketed wrong. No. It was all Andrew Stanton. That failure was 100% on him and him alone. Disney's mistake on that movie was doing literally everything he wanted. Everything. Even letting him micromanage the marketing campaign. And he made changes to the source material. He went with the wrong visual style. He applied the Pixar style of filmmaking, which is basically remaking the movie over and over again until you get it right. but that actually costs money when you do it with live actors and then the CGI on top of it. So yeah, it cost too much, earned too little, wasn't happening anyway. But Tron, on the other hand, that could have been something. I mean, we should have been on Tron's Part 5 right now. In another universe where they didn't have Marvel, they probably would have proceeded with Tron Part 3. The excitement was there. So I'm kind of like thinking that that we're getting this right now is a sign that Iger is trying to diversify now when he knows that the previous golden eggs.
I'm not so sure about that.
Well,
I think I mean I get what you're saying, Andre, but I will disagree in a sense that I think the only fucking reason this movie is happening is Jared Leto. I think that's the only reason this movie is happening.
Disney considers him that bankable a star.
It's just that that's the only reason there's any interest in it, is that he has shown interest. His production company is probably a part of it. So he's probably got some investor involved or what. We got to keep that in mind too. Like, if he's showing interest in it, and even though his movie career isn't something to write home about, he still has a following. He has like Six was pointing out, he hits all the points that they think are important right now in Hollywood.
And you know what he also doesn't have? He doesn't have a Joker, and he doesn't have a Morbius, and so he's looking for something else.
He has been for a while. That's what he's been desperately struggling for in the last decade.
Yeah, he needs his franchise character to stay in the conversation. Again, Robert Downey Jr. had Iron Man. Tom Cruise has Ethan Hunt. Those are very lucrative.
Those facilitate you doing the artsy fartsy films. Sorry, script.
They allow you to, yes, but on top of that, they also allow you to claim residuals for many years to come after you no longer doing the role. I mean, I guarantee you right now, Robert Downey Jr. is not seeing those 10-cent checks yet. I think they're still in the several $1,000s for.
Oh yeah, he still sells a lot of dolls too. Don't forget that shit.
Exactly.
And you're right. That's where a lot of the money is. It's not so much even in the movie itself. It's selling Morbius dolls, right? Like his likeness is on those dolls, so he gets a fraction of a cent every time one of them sold or whatever it is. He worked out for his deal. So it all adds up at the end of the day. You're 100% right. That's where a lot of these actors, from what I've been hearing, is how they stay alive is through all the residuals that they got earlier years. And that's where they'll just do, piddly shit here and there that they can get, but they're still able to function financially, is because of all the, the movies and stuff they did years ago that, they still generate figures and re-releases on video and such that, they get a nice fat $5,000 check here and there, a nice $10,000 check here or there. Sometimes even maybe more, like we've heard, like with Jack Nicholson, he's banked, tons of money.
So what
on
you're
Batman.
saying is being a huge A-lister like Robert Downey Jr. is a good deal if you can get it.
Well, and that's the thing we've argued before, is he technically an A-lister? He wasn't before Iron Man, and I'm still seeing him struggle to be one outside of Iron Man.
Yeah, this is
and
true.
Maybe
this
Sherlock
with many of them. Well, he's not getting any more Sherlock. Like, where's Sherlock Part 3?
There's been rumbles about that, but
but for the past decade or what? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I don't.
That's
maybe
my point.
Dr. Dolittle was his other attempt. That didn't take off the direction he wanted. Yep.
Everything he's done outside of Sherlock and Marvel has not been a hit. And prior to that, people forget he was not a star. He was a character actor. Outside of Chaplin, he had not really had and Less Than Zero, I think. He had not really had too many films where he was the star and they were studio-driven films. He had done a lot of indie stuff.
He did that one with Sybil Shepherd where he was the co-star with her.
Exactly. And then he also did what was the one Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but he was also had a co-star in that one too.
Him and Val Kilmer were the leads of that.
And that didn't do well at the box office, but it found its way on video later, right? Again,
that's a classic. It's a great movie.
That's what I'm saying. He's never had one of those movies that put him in the pantheon of an A-list star until he was in Iron Man. And then he coasted on that because he made a lot of the Juror or whatever it was he did where he was a lawyer or whatever, and he's done all these other movies. He did that one with Jamie Foxx, and
he did when before he got Iron Man, he was doing whatever he could get. Like he did the Shaggy Dog,
exactly.
He did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. What else was he doing? Well, he just wanted to act. He did Ally McBeal for a few years.
That was the best thing he did. I mean, that's kind of like what got him back on track in a sense.
Well, and we keep persistently hearing these rumors that he's coming back to Iron Man. Like Six just sent me here in the background. He's confirmed again to appear at some point, and we've heard that he's going to show back up.
I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after Iron Man came out, Tropic Thunder, but that's an ensemble cast.
Yeah, that was an ensemble. And again, it's nothing personal. I love Robert Downey Jr. It's just we can't pretend that he was this big actor when he really wasn't before that, as far as like an A-lister.
Even in Hollywood, once he got Iron Man and Tropic Thunder, and you could, if you got him attached to your project, you were getting your money. That's the other part too. Like that's how it kind of.
His other big picture before that was the role he played in the whole Fugitive spin-off movie.
U.S. Marshals?
Yeah. I think that was his only other big movie otherwise before Iron Man. Because that's the thing. He's in Back to School and a few other movies that I remember, but most of the stuff he had done outside of Chaplin was like, mostly, like you said.
He's part of the Brat Pack to a degree.
Yes, to a degree, yeah. So he was there, but he was never like, even Rob Lowe, I would say, was probably a bigger star than him at one point. Speaking of the Brat Pack. But no, I would put Jared Leto on that level. So you're right. That's what he needs, getting us back on topic here. Jared Leto needs an Iron Man. He needs something that he can...
Thought he had it with Morbius, but that did not work out.
Yeah, he's also had it with Joker before that. And again, now he's trying with Tron. Will it work?
No.
I'm not comparing the two as actors either, so don't think I am. I'm just saying as far as like where their status is in Hollywood. But what Jared Leto has that Robert Downey didn't is the whole following that Six was talking about from his band days. So yeah.
Well, isn't Jared Leto? He's like the same age as Ben Affleck, so
yeah, he's not young.
Is this Tron movie going to be a one and done? Are they trying to revitalize the whole Tron franchise and reinvigorate the fandom and start cranking out Tron stuff? Or is this...
You don't do this kind of thing without trying to set up a franchise. That's
what I'm saying is he's 51. He does not look 51.
And I will say this, as a hardcore fan of Tron, which fandom? Ain't no Tron fandom.
Unfortunately, Andre is right in that respect. But to answer Six's question, well, no, it's a very small niche.
You don't see the kind of like
everywhere. Yeah, and those that actually kind of like live for that movie would be like really excited for another. You basically have to restart everything because it's a brand that doesn't really have like a brand following or anything like that. There's like some.
There's a division too. Yeah.
Yeah, but
there's a certain fan. I was just gonna say there's certain parts of the fan base who don't even consider the sequel. Like they don't like the sequel. They just like the original, and that's it. Sorry, Andre. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I know, and I consider the sequel to be better than the original. But that's something of a minority view there. But either way, it's a genre movie. I mean, we have the two. I would have liked the third one, a direct continuation, which could have been done on a much lower budget, I think. But what they're trying to do here is basically they're trying to restart the franchise again. And that's what they did the last time. They tried to restart it, and it failed.
I can predict how this is going to go.
Yeah, and I think it's going to fail one more time. Even if the movie could very well be interesting in its own right, I don't.
Well, we have a comparison. We have a very good comparison, and it's a franchise that has arguably a bigger fan base, but is just as small in the grand pantheon of things, and that is Blade Runner. Look at what happened. It's the same fucking situation.
Yeah,
you had the first movie where it became a cult classic over time, much like Tron did the same thing. And then when they did the sequel, it did okay, but it didn't do well enough to warrant continuing this fucking franchise any further than that. And this is going to same thing here. I don't think it's going to do anything worthwhile.
With one major difference, though.
Yeah.
Blade Runner is a far more recognized cult movie.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
like that even had more of a chance, and it still failed.
It had more of a chance, but it cost way too much. I mean, some idiot allowed Denis Villeneuve to go completely wild on it when they should have said you get 60 million budget maximum. Instead, he treated it like an Avengers movie when it came to spending.
Well, and there may be a point to that, Andre, and I think Script, you brought this up last night, and that reminded me of what had happened with this whole thing to begin with. Because to try and save the third story, to try and entice Disney to make it, they made the third movie to where it would be a more budget-friendly story, right, Script? Because it was going to take place mostly in the real world. You were saying last night.
The two scripts that I read way back when was what took place in the real world, and it was basically kind of like a chase film, hunting Cora. Would that be what's her name's character?
The main chick in the movie.
The main chick's character.
Yeah, like the princess, or like some title she married into.
Yeah,
I forgot
just finding her because apparently
13 in house.
Yeah, she could heal like she just the medical. They wanted to harvest her for medical research essentially, and it took place all in the real world. I don't even recall if there's really any stuff inside the grid at that time. But yeah,
there's no reason not to make it.
Yeah, exactly. But it would have been a very low budget film.
And that's where I'm wondering.
It was Cillian Murphy's character of Dillinger's son trying to get her.
Yeah, and that's where I'm wondering if that's where they're still kind of headed in that direction to make it a cheaper budget. And if that's the case, fine, great. If they manage to do that and the movie makes $100 million at the box office, $200 million at the box office, and only cost $40-50 million to make, great. I just don't see that happening with Jared Leto involved.
No,
he's going to walk away with.
They could probably do a Tron film cheaper now because of the stagecraft volume.
True,
technology.
True. That's one thing that has changed in the decades since the last one came out. You're right.
Yeah.
So there's that. So we'll have to see how this goes. We'll see how it develops. 6, anything more to add to it, or should we move back into Super Chats?
No, I'm good. Jared Leto's a terrible actor.
As much as you love him.
As much as I love him as a rock star.
Oh, he's a rock star. That's all that matters. D789 sends in $10 and says, "Greetings, Midnight's Edge crew. I want to say hi to my brother, who's also a Midnight's Edge fan, probably listening now. Well, hopefully he knows you by your handle. So there you go." Then we got HTL Fellarudo says, "I will say something about the 90s none of you stated. It was the end of the Cold War and it reflected in the world. The 90s show doesn't address that." Yeah, there's a lot of things. Like I'm sure 6 and I and others could sit here and go on for about, 2-3 hours about the things that they could have done with this and the things that are kind of missing.
Well, I mean, we could probably take a look at 2 prominent shows that were in the 90s. And I think, what would that be? Like Seinfeld and Full House, if you want the kids,
Friends,
and
maybe,
and the adult side of things.
Oh, where you want like a comparison like that. Yeah.
Like a comparison of like what topics did the kids shows of the 90s address and what did the adults do in the 90s? And you take 2 of the most popular shows of that era and you say, okay, well, what is very distinct about the 90s for the kids' perspective there, and what is very distinct about the 90s from the adult perspective there, and that's how you can find a foundation. But even in because again, I had to watch Full House. God, my girlfriend I had before this one, we broke up over this show, and I out of a joke, but yeah, I had to watch Full House, and I'm like, there's nothing in it that's very of that decade at that time that I can remember.
I hate that show.
There's also kind of the only thing that's of that decade that you kind of recognize.
Full House had a
few things. There's no smartphones and there's no real internet. It's all interpersonal stuff.
The things that Full House had, though, were usually pop oriented, right? Like it was a tie-in for fucking John Stamos because he was touring with Beach Boys at the time. And
I messed up. Sorry, I did not. I don't hate Full House. That came out wrong. Step by Step is the one I was thinking.
They're both the same fucking show.
That's the Brady Bunch ripoff.
They're the same fucking show, Andre. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, that very well be. But I haven't seen.
Honestly, I have more respect for Step by Step because it had to let Patrick Duffy in it at least.
I just hated Step by Step. It was awful.
Are you laughing at me or him now, Script, because of Patrick Duffy?
You because it is a bad show, but it was the 90s version of the Brady Bunch.
Well, absolutely, 110%.
I had never heard of Brady Bunch at the time, so I had no concept of that.
Because that one surfer dude was basically the Fonz character, yeah. But yeah, that's the thing.
Fonz was in the Brady Bunch?
No. But like they added like a Fonz type character to Step by Step is what I'm saying. Like he was the guy who lived at, he lived in above the garage or in the attic or whatever it was. He was no relation to the family or cousin or whatever it was at the most, but like, yeah.
In Step by Step, you mean?
Yeah, the surfer dude guy. I can't remember his name.
Was that the real life kickboxer? The one who...
Yeah, I think he passed away recently.
Something.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but anyway. Step by Step. Yeah, get away from it. Full House, same thing. Fuck that show. Fuck all those shows. Family Matters was and Perfect Strangers were the only decent shows out of that whole bunch.
Well, that was fun.
That was the CBS. Thank God it's Friday, right?
ABC, but yeah,
ABC, yeah.
But yeah, even that, even Family Matters overstayed its welcome when it became the Urkel and
Carl show.
Carl show, basically. Yeah. I mean, that wasn't so bad, but I mean, it was still like, it just kind of got to a point where like Urkel's still trying to play a teenager, and it's like, it's not working. Elf says, I do believe that Harley Quinn was a much better than Velma because even if it has woke elements, it's not the main focus. Plus, Harley apologizes when she's not in the right. I think it also helps that Harley is more of a modern character. Like, she's 30 years younger than Velma. So, like, that helps, too. Or at least 20 plus years.
She's had a shorter popular culture legacy, even though her impact is really, really great. But, yeah, the difference between Harley Quinn and Velma is Harley Quinn is trying to do the Venture Brothers take on the DC superheroes, and Velma is just mean.
Yeah, there's that too. Like, I could see the elements of Harley playing better than Velma. I agree with that 110%.
Harley, it's from the villain's perspective, and the jokes that they play is the fact that the villains always fail and lose to the heroes, and they have fun with that. It's a better show than Velma, but it's not a great show overall.
See, now you just pitched me a better show than Velma right there. I want to see a show now from the villain's perspective on Scooby-Doo.
There you go.
Like, all these kids keep fucking with their plans. Like, basically the kids are from the villain perspective.
They're all in jail, and they're all planning a breakout to get back at the kids in one elaborate mystery. Yeah.
Well, I just want to see the other side of it. Like, they're like, see it from their perspective as they are the heroes. And these kids are just meddling fucking kids who just keep fucking with their plans. Like,
I'm trying to get back at the guy that stole my amusement park.
Yeah. These fucking kids just won't leave me alone. What the fuck? Like, tried scaring them off 6 times.
I had to go to a bank to get a loan for a holographic projector of a ghost.
Jesus Christ, yeah. They wouldn't give me a loan to save the fucking park, but they gave me the loan for the projector. Go figure.
Yeah, exactly.
Master Clockwork says live action Bambi needs real ambo and real deal. Ooh, wow, I don't know about that. Well, I mean, coming from Wisconsin, I can't really say I'm like, oh, like 6, but like deer are like fucking walking rats. They're like huge fucking rats. That's all they are. They're everywhere. They get into everything. They got 0 fucks to give about anybody but themselves, and they're a nuisance to me. Sorry. They like overtake this town. It's crazy. I've got tons of pictures of them just hanging out in my yard. I got video somewhere of Sadie like nose to nose with one, and the fucker's like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, you better hope her fucking chain don't break. Like, that's all you hear me say. I mean, I don't know what she'll do if she catches you, but
Probably get kicked in the head.
probably. That's the sad part. Aaron Pipe says, remember when they actually blew up a mule with real dynamite in Heaven's Gate? No, I don't, but I'm not surprised. That movie was a fucking nightmare from what I remember hearing about the making of it. Oh, Lord. Then we got Lofty Pixels who says, don't need more gun rules. People will inevitably break them anyway. Same with gun control in Hollywood. The real guns in Wick films are amazing. I don't want CGI. It's not necessary. Well, there's been a big debate about that, Lofty, about the whole CGI taking over. Like, is there even a real reason for us to use blanks and all that kind of stuff in the day and age when we can create guns that have like an airsoft kick and you can add,
airsoft kick. They have the ones that shoot out baby powder.
Yeah, so there are reasons and things that they could use and should use probably that I don't see why there's a reason why. But as far as the rest of what you're saying goes, I don't disagree with it. I'm surprised that they haven't tried to swing this whole thing on this note of the whole Alec Baldwin situation, that they haven't tried to swing this whole thing into a gun control issue. Like as some convoluted fucking thing to take the heat off of them.
Well, it's really hard to, because if you look at the rules of the safety protocols involved with the stuff on set, it's pretty much...
That's probably why.
Like, again, those rules are made by people that are gun enthusiasts and gun experts as well. Like, you're kind of just leaning right into the narrative of responsibility and care and not abusing the thing. And it's like, I don't think there's anyone who, if you saw what those rules were, you would be like, those are incredibly reasonable. Why would those not obliged by on this particular set? And that's the question.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Yeah, but I mean, as far as Alec's case, though, like he could have been using this for his own political pushes, and it's like shit. If you're not even going to be at least bit fucking remorseful for the life you took, though, I'm surprised he's not going out there going, yeah, like yes, this is a good reason why guns should be, blah, blah, blah. You know, I just can't believe he's not. Other than the reason you just said, so at least he's smart enough to know that. Maybe
I think as soon as it happened, he 100% went into how am I going to get out of this mode.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He at no point has he ever taken any kind of responsibility. And that's the thing. We had this discussion last night on TNT about where we're going, like, that's the part to me that makes him more of a vile human being than anything else. Because even if you're somebody who knows you may not be necessarily responsible in this situation, there's still not even that just remorse of the idea that you played a role in the death of somebody. You know what I mean? Like, even somebody who has a remorse in like an automobile accident, you'll see it, you know, kind of thing. Like, even though they know there was no, even if the other person was completely at fault and they died, you'll still see people having to deal with, you know, grief in the situation, maybe even going to the therapy or PTSD with the whole, you know, none of those things seem to be evident with him. Like, he's a perfect narcissistic, like I can't even believe some of the shit that's come out of his mouth through some of the, like, it's like, how are you even a human being? Sometimes is like what I'm thinking. Like, are you sure he's not a robot? Like, but anyway, I don't know if okay, Andre's back. I was gonna say I don't know if Andre's back, but anyway, Elf says between Jared Leto and Brie Larson, who's better? Andre? I don't know. This is pretty hard.
Leto. Leto is better. I have to go with Leto. Even why? He is better because while he is not a star candidate, he at the very least is a very serviceable backup genre actor. Like, for instance, I thought he was really, really good in Blade Runner 2049. I thought he was pretty good in what's it called, Requiem for a Dream. Like, he's good when he gets to be like in these character roles, either in the background.
He's what I call an interesting actor.
Movies, exactly, and he was really, really good in that movie. What's it called again? The one about the AIDS epidemic. The Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah, Dallas Buyers Club.
You know, the one where Fauci, for all intents and purposes, is the villain because he's the one that put that toxin out there that was killing them all. He's really, really good. He stands out. He's completely mesmerizing in the right kind of role. But he has to be used sparingly and in the right kind of role. Whereas Brie Larson, I mean, I thought she was okay in Kong Skull Island, and if I were to rewatch it now, maybe I wouldn't think that. But her problem is that she's not that good of an actress in the first place. She only has chemistry with some limited people, and when she doesn't have chemistry with the other leads, again, she's also someone that's maybe not like a lead candidate, someone that should be in the background. But of the two, Jared Leto is definitely the more intriguing.
Yeah, I got to go with you on that because Script Doctor,
they both kind of suck. Jared Leto's method aspects is not a behavior I endorse.
I was just gonna say, you've confirmed though those rumors about the whole dead animals and other shit.
He sent packages of things that were inappropriate to people.
Yeah. So in that
respect, see what was in there. All I know is that a guy opened it up, said, "Oh, we heard it's from Jared," and they just walked over and tossed it in the trash. And he's like, "No one looking there."
Oh Jesus!
We didn't.
Yeah, probably a used condom or something. So yeah.
But that to me is enough evidence to prove that shit happened. And in that respect, even though he's kind of a weirdo, yeah, like I'll tell you, Andre, I watched Kong Skull Island for the first time after all the Brie Larson bullshit. Said I actually had not seen the film. I watched it when it first came out. At that point, Brie Larson was nothing more to me than another person in a movie I didn't give a shit about personally, and she was okay, I guess, at the time in the movie. It didn't bother me one way or the other. But then when I watched it again after the fact, she stuck out like a sore thumb and rubbed me wrong the whole way through. Didn't ruin the movie, but I'm just like, okay, yeah, she stands out now.
Yeah, but just that she didn't the first time only goes to show that what happened between the first and the second time is that her off-screen persona had ruined her performance for you. But her performance, had you not known of her, was fine.
Mm,
That's kind of like what that says.
partially. Another thing was,
but she was fine for a background character.
Another thing is all the pro-feminist shit she was doing stood out even more. Like, see, at the time when I first saw the movie, it kind of was fine for the fitting of the time, because at the 70s, that was, at the tail end of in the midst of the feminist movement and all that kind of shit. So when I saw it the first time, that's probably what I chalked it up to. But this time, it's just coming off in her normal, like, bitchy tone and shit when she does it. That
based of her off-screen persona.
Exactly, it influenced it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what it did. And there's some actors like Jared Leto who I can overlook that. He's a decent enough actor. I'm not going to say he's a good actor. That's why I use the term interesting actor.
He's a method actor. They're dangerous.
Yeah. That's another point, though. That's the thing. It's somebody who is actually... I technically could call myself a professional actor at some point in my life, and has actually had professional training in other things. I think method acting is fucking redonkulous. I do. I think it's the most redonkulous, stupid thing ever, and it's basically an excuse for narcissistic people to get away with shit they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, the only method lesson that I approve of is if you're trying to do a specific regional dialect and you have to speak it constantly. That's the only thing that... But even that is acting, you're just getting the habit of knowing the pronunciation of certain words to match your character.
Yeah, and again, you're right. That doesn't fall in that category, because to me, that's no different than, taking a ride with a cop or some other shit to learn about what it is that your character would do, or that to me falls in that category. Is how is my character supposed to sound, right? Mm-hmm. Like, mailing dead fucking animals and use condoms to people is beyond fucking cool. Like, that is not cool. Like, you cannot be doing that shit. And like you said, it's dangerous in a sense that I'm surprised more people haven't been hurt when they are doing that shit. And sometimes it's funny, like with Jim Carrey on Man on the Moon, but that could have got out of hand when he got tossed out of the studio. He could have hurt somebody or got hurt himself. There's things that could happen at times. And, frankly, I'm sure Six would... I'm going to ask you your choice here too, and I can almost imagine your choice, but coming from somebody who's a vegan and him being a vegan, isn't that kind of a no-no to be killing animals for, even if it's just for method acting?
Well, what exactly did he send? Was it something he scooped up with a shovel on the side of the road? I don't know. Or, I mean, Jared Leto sends somebody
where they got it from.
Yeah, Jared Leto sends somebody a dead animal and everybody freaks out. But if Culture Casino mailed you a box of steaks, it'd be okay, wouldn't it, Tom?
Well, that's harvested. That's different.
He didn't kill that himself, nor did he pick it off of the road.
But but here's the difference. If Culture Casino sent me a dead fucking rabbit or some shit that wasn't fucking
just like because it wasn't dressed and
exactly, because that's sending a fucking message. That's not sending me a meal.
Yeah,
I know. I don't know the details of what he sent.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
I think that's a very important distinction, that between sending a message and sending a meal.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the difference.
Very weird. But from my impression of Jared Leto is that his shortcomings are on the screen, whereas Brie Larson's shortcomings are in her personal life. And I think one says who she is and the other says he's just not a good actor.
Speaking of personal life, only one of those two is a cult leader.
Cult leader.
Yeah, the other one's a cult follower.
Brie wishes she was a cult leader, but nobody will pay attention to her. That's the problem.
She wants to be, but for a cult that can't actually, where people have to, at Comic-Con, like people have to go and say, there's Brie Larson over here. Come, go and crowd her, please.
There are some Brie bots, but that's about it, yeah.
No, not money enough to give her a crowd.
Does anyone even want to be in my cult? I don't know. I really don't know.
Six got a cult? Yeah, no. No, she's doing the Brie Larson thing, I know. Yeah. Do you want me to have a cult? Do you? Because I don't think you do. I don't think there's enough people who want me to have a cult. Exactly. Hillis Mallory says, still say Morbius got Black Cauldron treatment. You may have. I wonder if there's an extended cut that'll leak its way online at some point. That'd be interesting to see. I don't think it's going to fix the fucking movie. I don't think there's some miraculous, wonderful version of the movie that we didn't get to see. But I do agree with you. There's probably some more R-rated stuff that we didn't get to see in the film, for sure, yeah. Kind of like how Black Cauldron got cut down from PG-13, basically. I don't know how familiar you are with that, Andre, but I think you are.
No, not really.
Really?
Not at all.
See, because that's actually a Disney movie I think you'd get into, and it was...
I know.
a very interesting story
I'm
behind it.
just not familiar with the story behind it. You have to tell me that some other time. No?
Yeah, it's a long
Super
story.
chats to go
So,
Yeah,
but that's definitely like a
another time.
Midnight's Edge type video, actually.
Yeah, let's make it.
Doug 1985 VA says Tron should be a bigger franchise than Avatar technically, with video games, AR, virtual reality, and etc. really existing and being used through most of the world. You're not wrong on paper, but the first film didn't have a huge impact like the first Avatar did, right? Like that's the thing, is no matter how much I don't personally like Avatar, I will never deny the impact that it had technical wise on theaters, the impact it had on the world in general. Tron is a blip in comparison. Tron, when it first came out, was, basically like computer nerds and video game nerds were into it, and that was about it. And a few kids. But it was overall a bomb for Disney. It was one of their big gambles that didn't work out for them. And I can't remember the name of the guy. If Culture was here, he'd tell me where the guy who was going to start piecing out the company in the 80s, but it got stopped. They were in very dire straits because they could not come up with anything. Their animated films were not doing well. So on a level of like cultural impact, Tron was more of a footnote and sometimes even a joke up until more recent years than Avatar, unfortunately, even though I love Tron a lot more than I love Avatar.
Tron's a better film than Avatar.
Oh, absolutely.
It's also a simple film, but the other part too, like John Lasseter was involved with Tron, if I'm not mistaken, and they did
yes, he was
groundbreaking stuff on that.
They technically used what became the Pixar computer, I believe, on Tron, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and but the other part too is that it was a very grueling work environment to get that movie finished in post-production, and it just didn't warrant, and it didn't have as much of a cultural impact at the time that Disney was hoping for to warrant any continuation of it. And on top of that too, other people had no idea how to do a follow-up story to Tron after Tron came out. It wasn't until the internet became more of a thing publicly that's when people started saying, hey, we gotta start figuring out how we can do Tron with the internet now, that you can go World Wide Web and all that stuff. And then it took another 10-15 years before they even got what was Tron Legacy. And I think the reason that movie took off had more to do with the music than the actual story.
Well, that helped, but I think what also helped with Tron Legacy is it came at a time, and not exactly the right time it should have, or it would have had a bigger impact. But I think what Andre, I think I may like about it too, is that at least the one thing I did enjoy about it is how it expanded on the idea of how computers. Because when the first time I saw Tron as a kid, it was just a Tron. It was Tron. It was just a movie. But then later on in life, where I got to learn respect for it was when I worked for an ISP. One of the guys I worked with, he's like, "You don't understand computers for shit, do you?" I'm like, "No." Because I was in the advertising and billing department. I didn't fucking care. But they had me around. They wanted me to do some shit in between stuff. He's like, "Well, you can do this, and that, and the other." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to wreck it." So he's like, "Well, I'm going to show you how a computer works." And he sticks in Tron. And he's like, "Pay attention." And I'm like, "Well, I've seen the movie." He was like, "No, pay attention." And he's like, and he gives me a lesson throughout the film of basic computing shit, like using Tron as like a teaching tool.
That was actually a really good way of teaching it.
So when the sequel came out, I really dug how they expanded upon, bringing in ISOs and other things. Like, those are things I know. Like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, it opened up the world a little bit differently to me.
Each avatar is a program that has a specific function, and
I kind of got that,
communicate and some can't.
Yeah, but he really explained it to me like that, in a sense of, this is how a computer works. Like, he's like, that is like this, and this is like and he would kind of just gradually walk me through the movie with little lessons of basic computer functions. And that got me through a few years without destroying my computer. Now I can't do that. So. Alexander Tan says Tron 3 movie because Disney had a new Tron ride. Oh, did they open up a new Tron ride? I forgot about that. If they did,
they must have been working on that ride for years then.
Yeah. That might be one of the reasons why they would want to. I could see that being a factor. Yeah.
Need to garner up that. They need a commercial to advertise the park. Tron 3 could do it.
Yeah. That is true. Mecha J says, if you want to see Velma with some sass and attitude voiced by a woman named Mindy, I recommend watching Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. It does a mature take on Scooby-Doo gang so much better. Well, Mecha J, I'm not surprised. As we've said, this is a franchise that has lasted the better part of almost 50 years now, right? 69 it debuted.
Thereabouts.
Yeah. So at this point, there's not much you can do with it that hasn't already been done. And that's just it. This show is worse than some of the parodies we've seen in like SNL and Robot Chicken and all these other places throughout the years. So when you're not even as good as some of that shit, then there's something wrong. I don't even see how this show would appeal to anybody at this point. And that's the funny thing I've heard from a lot of people too. Mr. Tickle Trunk says Brad Dourif is a method and amazing. Leto's a D-bag. I don't know if he's as method as Leto. Like,
he's not the method at all.
Not in the sense that we like. Maybe when he gets into the scene, because like he did say, like when we were talking to him about Chucky, I do recall him saying something like he does like this thing to get all revved up or whatever.
Yeah, but that's not like
that's not the same as method.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because he's got to get himself into a place where he'll scream and shit, he says, or whatever it is. Like he'll just do like primal screaming and then he'll just start doing Chucky.
Yeah, but that's just putting himself in like the mental state that's required to get in the mood and everything. That's not going like method. Method is like thinking he's Chucky the whole time.
Because the irony, cameras are rolling or not, they're in the character. Yeah.
Because I don't know if it's irony or not, but the irony of his story that he told us was the whole thing. Because I had asked him about the whole, is it true that, you know, the whole punching your hole in your, Lynch asked David Prochnow to punch a hole in his cheek so they could do that one thing. And he's like, I wouldn't fucking do it. So to me, that doesn't sound like he's very method.
When I hear method actor, I automatically assume that they just stopped showering.
Well, if they want to go method as a California homeless, yeah, that's absolutely the way to do it. But yeah.
I don't know why that's fucking true. It is. And Diron sends in €5 and says, he'll be in my cult. Well, we're a cult of 2 now, Diron. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And with that, we are done with the super chats. And we are done with the show. Thank you so much, kids, for being here. Six, do we have anything coming up to plug?
Tonight, Tom had better be on Loki's Mornings of Mischief late night show.
I will do my best.
At I think it's at 10 Eastern, maybe 11 Eastern. And then I'll be there too. And then Late Night Culture, Sunday night at 10 or 11 Eastern. Tom will maybe be there. Oh, wait. Weekly wrap-up on Mead.
As I said, there's a show before that, too, usually.
I forgot.
And I know scripted, I want to get back to our A-rated B movies at some point here, but I think we're getting talked into doing
meetings tomorrow afternoon. But my morning is free, so I might end up doing a Diablo thing.
I was going to say, not only that, I think Nina's trying to talk me into, or at least said something about the Yellowstone thing, too, since I've been talking about it, that you guys are doing, too.
Yellowstone? So. I think we're doing Tulsa King this Sunday.
Or that's it. Tulsa King is on Sunday. That was one of them, yeah. She asked me something about it, and it was like 2 weeks ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, and I just dropped last night my review of Lioness, that pilot, that the Taylor.
Oh, so you actually put out a video? I didn't get an alert.
It's not a video; it's on my Patreon. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have to guess. I guess
if I want to do a video on a script, that's going to be the same as my Patreon. It's just.
Do we have his Patreon, Andre?
Yeah, it's in the description.
No, I mean, do we subscribe to it so yet. I can go? Well, get on that, my man, so I can go read his stuff.
Yeah, sure.
I'm on it. Yeah, I want to recommend Script Doctor's Patreon. I'm a member of it, and I highly recommend downloading the Patreon app to your phone, and then you can easily access his posts. Very in depth.
I got a lot of stuff on there already. If we're only
yeah.
See, there you go, Andre. You need to get on there and start doing your own little blog. Then we can start promoting the Patreon again.
I have enough writing stuff for Midnight Edge.
Yeah, but this is what I'm talking about. Just do stupid blog stuff, like like stuff you do for your day.
Yeah, well, I don't know who cares about that, but
I don't know. I think people do. I didn't mean to call it stupid, but you know what I mean, like important stuff, like like I watched this and I thought it was this stuff you wouldn't talk about on the show necessarily, is what I meant.
Okay, I was forced to watch Bling Empire with my wife.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. See, there you go. You can write a little blurb about that. See,
I might actually just do that for fun. I'll do that for one of the free posts on my Patreon. It's like I had to watch that 90s show because of my girlfriend.
I mean, I could do retrospectives on Selling Sunset and Emily in Paris and what have you, because I spend more time watching stuff like that than I would like to admit. But what I'm working on right now actually is the next scripted video. There's been very few of them this month. That's about to change. So Tom, get ready, because tomorrow we're going to drop my take on what lessons can be taken away from Froskurin and Adam Sessler having some parting words to their fans and peers.
Yeah.
And then loads of cool stuff is going to come after that. Disney and what have you not.
We got one more super chat before we head out the door. STR Red Wolf says, we can have soggy koalas now. Yes, Andre, as you say, it is time
for some koalas in the rain.
Koalas in the rain.